who don't know, I do represent the Great 28, District 28, representing parts of Jamaica, Richmond Hill, South Ozone Park, and Rochdale Village. It is always a pleasure to be with Showing Hearts, one of my favorite organizations, and their leadership in the manner of Sir David Tanis and Denise Dixon. Very, very, very brilliant individuals that I am always so happy to partner with. I see familiar names here on the screen, so good morning to all of you. You know, I just stopped by this morning to greet you and to let you know that when I was elected a little over 3 years ago, one of my primary commitments was to empower CBOs and empower nonprofits to engage in our communities in ways that they've not been able to engage before. And the only way that I knew how to do that was to fund them. I promised when I was campaigning my constituents that I was going to get our money back. We had issues in our district as far as our funds being held up in the New York City Council. And my promise was I promised to get our money back, to get our funding back. And I'm just so proud to, by the grace of God, to be able to have done that. And in my first year, I was able to fund over 40 nonprofits that had never been funded before. So I'm very proud of that, and I'm very grateful to the nonprofits that have come through so gracefully and gratefully to provide their awesome service to our districts, to our communities that need you so very much. So again, I know that you're going to get such tremendous value out of this session today by Showing Hearts, who always delivers in golden standard. So I welcome your esteemed keynote speakers. They are absolutely amazing, and I just know that they're going to blow your minds this morning in the information and knowledge that they will share with you. So with that, I wish you a fantastic event. Have a great day, and happy holidays to all. Thank you, Showing Hearts.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. So Fred, you have to take off your mic. I saw your lips moving, unless you weren't talking to us. Okay. Are you ready? So first up, I want to introduce one of our favorites, Brother Frederick Towles. I say brother because I'm so church. Everybody's sister, brother, Rev. But he is like a brother to us. He has done so much for the community, and we love and we appreciate him being here this morning. Frederick, can you tell us something about yourself and let everybody know what you're here to do today?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Denise. Again, it's early. It's 11. It's early, and I'm very excited to be here. As was said earlier, my name is Frederick Towles. I am an accountant by trade. Do a lot of work in the nonprofit space in New York City, as well as outside of the great state of New York. And today I want to present on banking. It's banking and finance. That's what I really want to focus on today. One of the things that you're going to have to know as a nonprofit organization leader, if you don't know already, is in order to get and be eligible for larger dollars and to sustain larger contracts, is you're going to have your back office stuff. Somebody say tight. Well, you can't say that. I'm used to crowds. Excuse me. I'm still getting used to this virtual space. You're gonna have your back office, together. And I just want to kind of lift up some things that'll help us get our back office infrastructure together. The first thing when we talk about banking, obviously, is let's go with the basics. We have to select the right bank, right? A lot of times people and organizations, they travel far to get a bank that will charge them little to no fees. I am of the mindset, especially with this coronavirus now going on the way it's going on, is that you have to find a bank that, in my opinion, that covers three things. One, they have to have some level of internet presence. They must. It is a must, right? Number two, and that goes without saying, obviously, right? Number two, it needs to be something convenient to you, right? You can't be, I don't think you would be able to A bank at a bank that's 30 miles away, especially if you're you're in the New York City area, that almost makes no sense, right? Especially with the pandemic that we have. And I was of the mindset of this before the pandemic. The pandemic has just further reinforced these things. And then number three, the customer service needs to be 24 for a bank. It needs to be 24 hours because how the thing is, trouble happens at all points and times of the day. Unfortunately, trouble doesn't just happen between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Trouble pops up whenever it pops up. So you need to be able to get on the phone with someone at your bank or from your bank that can handle or at least point you in the right direction of trouble, right? So,
Definitely. Uh, uh,
sure.
and with that, sorry to cut you off,
No,
Fred.
no, no.
I apologize. I 100% agree with that. So with that, I just want everybody to get a feel of a few of the keynotes as well that we'll be presenting before Fred hits us with the banking and hits us with the whole component of money matters. Well, thank you so much again for being with us, Fred. Denise, I know you want to introduce the other three keynotes, and then we'll have Fred begin with his presentation. I know she was here.
Okay, I'm coming out of hiding. Yeah, and just an FYI, I'm taking notes in the chat so that in the event someone's trying to catch up and you miss something, I don't type very fast, but I'm catching as much as I can so that it'll help you in your note taking in the event that you miss something. Okay, Chris, well, the other Chris, Christian, are you on? Let's see.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I would like to introduce you. So, Christian, oh, you know what? How about I pull up your bio?
Oh,
Matter of fact, you introduce yourself. She is here and she's going to be speaking to us about maintaining donor relations. That is very important when securing money because one of my things when I'm coaching organizations is I say people don't just give to initiatives, but they give to people. There's compassion that's tied to their giving. So this is where donor relations is very important because they don't just give to causes, they give to people. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I'm Christian Belton. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Been in New York for about 2 years. Started working nonprofit as in college as an intern with an organization called Fulton Atlanta Community Action Authority. I started there as a freshman in college and stayed there for about 10 years from intern to my final assignment as public relations director. And when I relocated to New York, I worked with Lupus Research Alliance in the development and donor relations department. And here recently now with the Philos Project, which is in New York City as well, as the donor relations specialist. And basically, I love talking to people and getting their money. And the key behind getting the money is developing that relationship and cultivating it. So I'll be sharing today on how to really massage those relationships, maintain your visibility without becoming annoying. There is a such thing as too much communication, but you have to know how to communicate and when to communicate. So that's all. And I hope to connect and learn as we share throughout this afternoon.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, and so next up, we have Jennifer Yarbrough. Are you on, Jennifer?
Yes, I am.
Yes. If you get a chance, you can go to her site, JD Yarbrough. She'll blow your mind. Yes, she has a track record of a phenomenal grant writer, and she offers a whole lot of services. So please tell us more about yourself.
I am from Southern California. This is where I am based. Started in the world of grant writing myself also as an intern, wrote my first grant was funded for $250,000 as a student, turning in an assignment. And so from there, have now garnered probably close to $900 million in grants, as well as probably close to that in non-designated funds from donors and corporations and celebrities and so forth. So I have held every single position in the nonprofit, starting as an intern and working my way up to the executive director. And then one of my jobs was to help nonprofit organizations start, put together plans and strategies, and train board members and executive directors, brand new, who were seeking funding. So I've had a close to 40-year run in this industry, and I'm not tired yet. I love the work that we do. I love the mission that we provide, the change that we offer. And I always say that our mission matters, that there's at least 1,000 people right now who are praying and desiring a change. And it's through our organizations. We do work that government cannot do, that businesses cannot do, and our missions matter. So we are not takers in the community, we are givers. We are assets to the community. And if we have the right capacity, the right training, the right skills, we can do great things that will just impact not only today, but for generations to come. So I'm excited to be here with you all and to share in my assignment today about grants and how to get grant funding.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Last and definitely not least is a dear friend, Christina McSwain. Tell us, well, see, and I know her just through church, and I got to find out how dynamic she is just from following her on social media. So tell us more about yourself, Christina.
Sure. So I'm also Chris. I saw my friend Christian here earlier. So happy to share this platform with you. But I am Chris McSwain, and I am a 13-year nonprofit marketer and communicator. I'm from New York, but I'm in Dallas, Texas now. I left New York City about 5.5 years ago, and just took a leap of faith to do something a little different in a new area. And so in terms of my career, I have been helping nonprofits tell their story and market to their audiences. I started out working for a small organization in Harlem, New York called Project Enterprise, right on 125th Street. And we helped unlikely entrepreneurs get access to capital. And so from there, I worked at a number of other organizations, big, small, you name it, in New York City. And like I said, 5.5 years ago, left New York to pursue something different. And so currently I am the community engagement director for North Texas Giving Day, which is the largest one-day community fundraising event in the country. And so in that role, I get to both lead the marketing strategy for what we do and how we do it, but I also get to help this organization and this event market to people of color, to younger millennial donors, and to those who are coming up and into their wealth. So it's a really great opportunity that helps me work with thousands of nonprofits because we empower and equip them to run fundraising campaigns. And also I get to set the strategy for this huge event that has really acclaimed national esteem. So super excited to share a little bit more about fundraising campaigns and the different things that I've learned along the way about how to form them, how to plan them, and how to execute them with excellence and with efficiency. And so I look forward to talking to you all a little later this afternoon. Thank you, Denise, and Showing Hearts for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for accepting. Okay, so we're gonna pick back up with Fred. Are you ready? I'm ready to get to typing. I'm ready.
Definitely. And right before we jump to Fred, in normal nonprofit boot camp fashion, if we were in person, you know, within the boot camp, we would be offering lunch to everybody, but we're virtually, unfortunately. However, that doesn't stop us from still offering lunch. So we ask that each organization that is part online right now, if you can, please type your email into the chat for us, and we would be providing lunch for everyone today via Uber Eats. So we'll be emailing you your lunch voucher. So we ask that each organization that's in the chat today, please feel free to type in your email address into the chat. And then once again, as I mentioned, we do encourage organizations to speak, engage. This is a boot camp. This is not a you just sit down and listen. We do want organizations to be engaged and ask questions, because that's the purpose of this event. All right. And that's the last of me. It's on you, Denise, and back to Fred.
Okay. We had someone just join, Shinsi Augustin. Yes, you missed the announcement for free lunch. So just throw your email into the chat, and we'll send you a lunch voucher. Okay. So we're going to pick up with Fred and get off to running. Okay, guys.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Please forgive me. I was ready to go earlier, so I do apologize. I do apologize. But again, my name is Fred Tiles, Frederick Tiles. I'm an accountant, work with a bunch of nonprofit organizations as well as for-profit organizations. As I said, all in New York City and outside of our state as well. I am here to shore up our back office, right? So that we can maintain those and apply, be eligible for those grants, right? We can look good on paper. So that's my job today, to help us look good on paper, right? And then the other facilitators will make you look even better in person. Does that make sense? So let's get to it. I will say this though, if there is a question along the way about what I'm saying, just throw the question in the chat. I'm here not to show how much I know, but I'm here to help, right? That's the idea, right? So if you have a question about something that was said, throw it in the chat. I'm gonna try to get to every question that I can in the chat, and then we'll move from there. All right. So let's take off. When we're talking about banking, there's really three things. There's only three things that I really want to focus in on today. The first is internal controls, right? And I'll go over this in a sec. The second is documentation, and the third, taxes. Internal controls, documentation, taxes. Denise, I got you. Don't worry. Internal controls, right? Internal controls.
I'm fast. I'm keeping up. I got it.
Okay, fair. Internal controls, documentation, taxes. Internal controls. Here's what an internal control is. An internal control is the mechanism, or should I say like the mechanics of behind the scenes, what causes an organization to disperse money, what causes an organization to, or what happens when an organization uh, disperses money, and what happens after an organization receives money. Internal controls are ultra or uber important, because if your internal controls aren't solid, two things could happen. The first, they could be embezzlement, right? And solid internal controls causes, or should I say, limits your exposure to embezzlement. That's the first thing. The second reason internal controls are important is because a solid internal controls will always allow you as an organization, or your organization, to know where it is financially. Those are two very, very important things. So what does an internal control look like? You've probably heard these as examples, right? So, as I said, internal controls talk about what happens when money comes in. So when money comes in from your nonprofit organization, one of your internal controls would be something to this effect, right? And you probably heard this before. The person that's taking the money to the bank should be a different person that is actually signing or having the ability to disperse payments, right? So that's two people. So the person that's taking the money to the bank, if it's in check form or cash form, right? And the person that's actually able to disperse payment, whether it be a handwritten check, right? I know a lot of us don't do that anymore, or disperse payment electronically. Those duties should be separated. Then the person that reconciles the bank statements, the bank accounts, those should be three very distinct methods or ways of doing it, right? So that's an internal control that no one person has the ability to count the money, to put the money in the bank, and to issue payment, right? You separate the controls so that you cannot, your organization is less liable to have any internal issues like embezzlement that happens. Another internal control. Well, what causes an organization to disperse money? Is it just that when a bill comes in or something comes in, an invoice comes in, we automatically send payment out? Well, and I understand in a smaller organization and some smaller organizations, this may be one person's function simply because a lot of times smaller nonprofits don't have the bandwidth to bring on a number of people to handle all of these responsibilities. So these responsibilities fall on one or two people. But the idea is as the organization begins to flourish, that these responsibilities now become dictated by other people, right? Or being driven by other people. So, an organization gets an invoice. Do you just cut a check for the invoice, or is there somebody there internally that is making sure that if the invoice says we receive 30 units of this or 50 units of this, that we actually receive 30 or 50 and not 28 or 48, right? Before payment is made. And again, that is again the danger of not having internal controls. And most importantly, internal controls have to be written down. They have to be written down. Some people might have called in the for-profit world, they're called SOPs. It's the same thing. They're still internal controls. That's the idea that they're written down. This is the methodology that what happens step by step from the time a check or a payment comes in to the time we record it in our accounting files, or vice versa. This is the things that occur from the time an invoice comes in until there is an actual check or payment being dispersed, right? Internal controls are very, very important. Secondly, documentation. Documentation, right? So the if you're ever audited, and let's go to the bad side, if you're ever audited by your federal government or the state that your organization resides in, or even a funder, right? Because a funder, especially if you're getting funds from New York City, New York State, the federal government, they have the ability to come in and audit your documentation. So again, the two internal controls and documentation go hand in hand, and here's how. Documentation. That means everything that everything your organization is actually spending money on, there should be something that we call in the accounting world a source document. Whether that source document is an email, whether that source document is a receipt, whether that source document is an invoice, there has to be some source document that you could track all of your financial transactions back to, right? So it's important that we keep those source documents in place, even if another organization is donating goods. So for instance, good an organization like Good 360, right? If you're using an organization like Good 360 to get merchandise to help people or help organizations and families that your nonprofit serves, you notice that organizations like Good 360 always send you documentation to say we sent this dollar amount of worth of merchandise, right? Why does Good 360 do something? And I'm just using them as an example, right? They're not the end all to be all. I'm not endorsing them. I'm just using them as an example. Why does Good 360 use that, right? I'm saying that because there may be somebody else on here that's like a Good 360. So I'm not endorsing one organization over the other. But why does Good 360 do something like that? Well, they do that because they have to document what they've dispersed and who they've dispersed it to, right? So just in case the people that are supporting them or a federal agency or a state agency comes in and says, hey, what happened to the merchandise that, or the money that we gave you, what happened to it? What'd you do with it? They don't have to begin to do a lot of talking, right? The key in an audit is this: if you're doing a lot of talking, you're already in trouble. If you're ever audited, federal, state, or funder, if you're doing a lot of talking and not a lot of showing of paperwork, you are already in trouble. So if you ever get audited and you see you're doing a lot of talking and the person on the other side is just kind of listening and saying, okay, and you're not doing a lot of paper showing or a digital file showing, 9 times out of 10, your organization's in a lot of trouble, right? If you take nothing away from today, know that if you're doing all the talking in the middle of an audit, you're in trouble, right? Because the idea is that this documentation is supposed to do all the talking for you. Your documentation should be of such, when you put it down on a table, right, in front of somebody, it should all make sense. Okay, I see where the money came in here. I see where something was done here. I see where it got sent here. Everything should be right. It should be minimal explanation verbally. All the explanation should be on paper, because our documentation has to be on point. Like, this is not the pretty stuff. I know this is not the pretty stuff. This is not about getting money and things of that nature, but this is how to keep your nonprofit organization afloat, right? This is how to keep you out of something that we call jail. And this is how we also keep your name and your organization's name clean. If your back office is not right, then there is a good possibility for fraud, right? You, as the executive officers of of your respective organizations, if there is fraud involved, two of the people they come get first are the executive director and whoever the treasurer or CFO is. Those are the two people that actually have the most exposure at least in the beginning, until the investigation is done. So please, that's not to scare anybody, but that's just to keep things in the forefront, keep in perspective, right? Um, so documentation, keep everything. I'm not saying that hold the paperwork everywhere, but form a system where you retain documents. That system could be, hey, every time something comes in, if it's not coming in via email, it comes in via the mail. We scan it and we order. We have folders in some systematic digital folders in some systematic format, so we can pull things up in a moment's notice. Right. That means you're probably going to have to get some IT people involved, because it's not going to be enough just to scan it and put it on your computer, but you're going to have it backed up somewhere, and maybe even have a redundant backup somewhere else. But that's for an IT person to handle, not me, right? I'm your back office guy, but I'm not that person, right? So you got to make sure that you have all of your documentation in place. What does that mean? Right? So that means meeting minutes. When your organization has a meeting, you need to record the minutes somewhere, whether it's right in this day and age, and it depends on which state you're in, right? Because I know some states allow you to, if you're having a Zoom meeting or something, some states allow you to record the Zoom meeting and keep the audio file or the video file as long as you memorialize it, that's good, right? For some states. In some states that doesn't work. It has to be actually written down. So somebody has to transcribe the actual meeting, right? That's documentation. Proof of your tax exemption, that's documentation you have to have in place, right? Any agreements that you have with other organizations, you can't do verbal agreements. Those shouldn't be done in a nonprofit space, right? If there is an agreement, the agreement, whether it's a physical sponsor agreement, some kind of joint venture agreement, all of those agreements shouldn't be just done verbally. They should be written down and memorialized somewhere, right? And then again, all of our receipts in terms of how we spent money, things of that nature. Um, if they're grants, obviously the grantor or the funder is going to send you documentation to say this is the money. There's some kind of contractual agreement. You want to keep all of those things and save them somewhere. That leads me to my last point, and that's taxes. Well, we talk about taxes. Well, here's what I mean. we talk about taxes in nonprofit space. It seems like the two don't mix, right? But they do. Taxes are something that's going to be with us and probably until our organizations cease, right? We're not going to get around it. In the nonprofit space, taxes include, obviously, if you have employees, you're going to pay the employment taxes, Social Security, Medicare, right? State taxes, etc. You're going to pay that, right? If your organization, here's something else. If your organization, especially in New York, if your organization is selling something basis, on a regular basis, I know in a nonprofit world, we say it's a donation and we're selling it, but if we're selling things on a regular basis, there's two things we have to worry about tax wise. One is sales tax, right? It is very possible if you're selling something, let's say you have an event on a regular basis and you're selling to the event, selling for the event, you want to check with your tax professional to make sure you're not liable to collect sales tax. Because as a nonprofit organization, you are exempt from paying sales tax on items you purchase that are not from a wholesaler. But if you're actually executing business on a regular basis and you're selling something, you may be liable for sales tax. You definitely want to check with your tax professional about that. The second thing is on tax side is this. If you are doing what's considered business on a nonprofit side, here's what I mean. If you're doing a trade or business on a nonprofit side, you potentially are liable for something that's called UBIT, UBIT, which is unrelated business income tax. So let's say, for argument's sake, your nonprofit organization does, I'm going to use Showing Hearts for an example, right? Because I know Showing Hearts intently, right? So Showing Hearts, the Showing Hearts Foundation is a nonprofit collaboration space, right? I know it's a lot more detailed than that, but I'm trying to give a high level overview, right? So Dave, please don't don't hurt me here. All right. So Showing Hearts is a nonprofit collaboration space. Let's say all of a sudden the board of Showing Hearts decides, you know what? In order in a mission to enhance our nonprofit or enhance our mission, we're going to open up a coffee shop in Southeast Queens, right? We don't want Starbucks in Southeast Queens. We're not really fond of Dunkin' Donuts coffee in Southeast Queens. We're going to open up a Showing Hearts Foundation coffee shop in Southeast Queens, right? Now, here's what happens. Ideally, on the surface, that looks fine. But because Showing Hearts would be going into a trade and or business in a space that's not connected to its purpose, then the dollar amounts that the coffee shop generates would be considered unrelated business. On all unrelated business over $1,000, that's the threshold. Once you reach $1,000 in gross revenue from an unrelated business, you're responsible to pay. Your organization is responsible to pay and to file an unrelated business tax return, which is a 990T, T as in Tom, right? That's what they're responsible for paying, and filing on a timely basis. Even if, watch this, even if your nonprofit organization did less than 50,000 and you're used to filing a 990N, that little checkbox thing, you check the box, say, did anything change? And you press, submit, and it takes you like 15 minutes to file your annual tax return for your nonprofit organization. Even if you file one of those, but you have $1,000 or more in unrelated business, you're still responsible for filing the unrelated business income tax return, right?
Fred, we got a couple of questions.
Let's go.
They ask, is it $1,000 per item or in total?
It's total for the year.
Okay, and is it a 190 or a 990T?
990.
990.
990T.
Did I get everybody's questions? Oh, and are you aware of the requirements for minutes for meetings in New York?
I am here's I'm not I know that we have to have them. In terms of what's acceptable, whether it's a video conversation or audio conversation, I would definitely speak with an attorney. If there's an attorney on the line, I would refer that to them. I try to stay in my space.
I hear that. Thank you.
For sure, for sure. And again, if
Shameless,
there's go
shameless
ahead, I'm sorry.
plug. Next nonprofit workshop we is going to be in regards to with nonprofit law.
Ah,
so
there you
so
go.
that could work.
There you go. There you go. All right. So, though these are these are the things that you have to think about, have to consider. Typically, what I tell my nonprofit clients is, if you are, let's say, it would be showing hearts, and they wanted to do the coffee shop, what I would typically say is, let's make that a for-profit entity, separate and apart. Let's separate the two from one another. That way, the coffee shop can work. Maybe we would make it a nonprofit. In most cases, I would say a for profit that the nonprofit controls, right? And then what ends up happening now, if the nonprofit is controlling this coffee shop, the coffee shop can now donate money to the nonprofit, and we won't have to worry about the unrelated business income tax. There would just be a tax over here for this for profit, because it's a for profit entity. Or if we were able to work a nonprofit out of this coffee shop and have a purpose united to it, then we would be good. But I would separate the two, because the purpose of showing hearts in this case would be very distinct from the purpose of this coffee shop, if that makes sense, right? That would be the idea. Any questions thus far about what's been said? Any questions, please? That's what I'm here for. I'm here to answer your, if I can, I'm here to answer your questions. If I can. Anybody?
Yes. Thank you for everything you've said thus far. I'm feverishly writing, and when it comes to the meetings, the minutes, can it just be? Does it have to be transcribed word for word, or can it just be summaries of discussions had?
I'm going to say refer to an attorney, right? Refer to an attorney. I know there has to be a meeting on a safe side until you were talking to an attorney, until you talk to one. On a safe side, what I would do, I'd do both. I'd have the audio meeting, and then I would have somebody just transcribe the meeting until we can hear something different from an established attorney that knows what he or she is talking about. That would be my suggestion. That way you're safe.
Got it. And then when you were talking, thank you.
Sure.
And when you were talking about the make sure, let me go to it. You're talking about the basically the checks and balances, right? Internal control.
Right.
When looking at internal control, how many people did you say is good? Two, or having three people when it comes to the like managing how the funds move in and out of the organization?
Ideally, now I know this may not be, again, I know sometimes we're talking about smaller nonprofit organizations, so this may be difficult. Ideally, on the income side, on the inflow side, right? Ideally, the person that's taking money to the bank, right, should be different from the person that is reconciling the bank account, right? That's probably easy because a lot of organizations outsource the accounting function. So that would be kind of easy, right? That's not a big deal. But then the person that's taking the money to the bank should be different from the person that's reconciling the account, should also be different from the person that has the ability to execute transactions on the company's behalf, right? I'll give you a story. I worked for a rather large nonprofit. I was an internal auditor for a rather large nonprofit organization. And one of the things that was happening is, yeah, this was a while ago, so I can say this. One of the things that were happening was that when they were sending out checks, someone inside the organization was using, and the nonprofit had more than one account. They had multiple accounts, maybe like 10 or 15 accounts. they were using one or two of the accounts to pay bills, their own personal bills. Right. So think about this for a second. When you call a creditor and they ask you to pay by card or by checking account, right? Typically, when you dial in, all they're doing is asking you for the routing and account number of the account. The routing and the account number for the account is on the bottom of every check, right? So what they were doing, they were reading off the routing and account number at the bottom of the check, paying. They weren't actually paying their personal bills. They were paying someone else's personal bills. And on the back end, the person's bill they were paying were giving them half of the cash. That was the hustle that they were doing, right? The thing is, this organization had very secure internal controls. So it happened twice in the same month. And once it happened, we were able to catch it pretty quickly. Why? Because there was somebody looking at these accounts on a regular basis, right? So you can't stop the execution of it often, right? You can't often stop the execution, but you can stop the continuation. And that's what we were able to do. We're not able to intercept the telephone call that they've made, right? But we were able to stop them from continuing that process. And that's why you want to have internal controls, because without internal controls, that kind of bleeding, it was never a big hit. It was always a small dollar amount, less than $1,000, right? You're talking about a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization that's getting hit with less than $1,000 in transactions, right? Here and there, 500 here, 700 there, 800 there, things like that. They were slow bleeding, right? Someone like, and I've heard of these stories often, when nonprofits get bled out of hundreds of $1,000s slowly over years, and they have no idea that the money is missing until somebody trips up. And then when they trip up, it's like 5, 6 years down the road, but they've been robbed of $100,000 or $200,000, right? That's why your internal controls are very important. Okay.
Solid. Thank you so much.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, we have one. I see something here. Okay. What happens to funds allocated to nonprofits once found guilty of misconduct? How can the community recoup these funds? All right. So recouping funds, this is another legal question, right? This is another legal question, right? Typically, if there's an issue with the nonprofit, if some kind of financial misconduct, there's typically a lawsuit, or it was like some kind of lawsuit that occurs, right? In terms of recouping funds, I'm not sure how you do that, right? Unless whoever stole them has things to liquidate, right? And the liquidation of the things that they acquired equals the dollar amount that they took from your organization. But oftentimes,
This gun is empty.
oftentimes, the oftentimes what ends up happening, most thieves, if they're stealing from you, they're probably stealing from somebody else, right? So you may not be the only one that's looking to recoup something, right? So, but I would definitely speak to an attorney about that.
I caught a question offline, Fred.
Sure.
Somebody asks if they haven't had these systems or these internal systems or et cetera in place, is it too late to implement it, or what happens to like if they start moving forward, what happens to the previous years? Like how can they reconcile that they didn't have these internal structures in place?
What I do, it's never too late. As long as your organization is open, right, and operating, it's never too late. You can start the internal control. You can start today, right? That's not a big deal. As far as going back, what I would probably do is, depending on how long the organization was operational before then, I may go back and have somebody just take a peek at all the financials, all the transactions, like kind of a pseudo audit to make sure that everything was up to snuff. Now, if you suspect that there may have been some fraud in the past, I'd definitely suggest an audit. I definitely suggest an audit, knowing that um it may, if it's more than one person, it may be difficult to pinpoint exactly who, but at least you would know what was going on, right? I would definitely suggest an audit.
So just for clarification, the checks and balances component, even if there wasn't no fraud in place, the checks and balances component of your nonprofit, if you didn't have these systems in place, um, you would start immediately, and I guess just have somebody audit all your previous books in the past and make sure that you have those books up to date, and then from today on, you'll put these internal structures in place, the checks and balance systems in place, and etc.
Right. But here's and like I believe it's Issa. Did I pronounce that right? Good. Like Issa has placed in the chat. Um, the audit going back would be somebody from the outside, right? But suggestion as your nonprofit expands, right? You do want internal auditors. You want somebody there that is not connected to any of the functions per se to overview or to review all of the functions before they happen, right? So, like I said, when we worked at the nonprofit organization, one of the things they were expanding, they were a multi-million dollar business before they hired internal auditors. They had a CFO, they had a controller, but they didn't have anybody looking over the AP and the AR shoulder. They had no one looking over their shoulder. And when they brung us on to do the internal controls, that's when we started finding all of this corruption. So this organization was actually had been bleeding before, but they weren't feeling the bleeding. It was referred to them that they need to hire internal auditors. They hired us, and then a lot of the bleeding all of a sudden stopped. And I'll say this: when we came on, there were quite a few people that left. And we found out later some of the people that left were some of the people that were engaged in or suspected to be engaged in some of this activity. So understand, it's like kind of like if you ever had a issue with like a rodent in your home, like a mouse or something, right? The mouse leaves like evidence that there's something wrong, even though you never see them, right? And then there's this one time when you actually get up at night and go into the kitchen or something, or go into that dark room and turn the light on. When you actually catch them, right? You know they're there because they leave an evidence. But when you turn a light on one at the most inappropriate time, that's when they try to vacate. And that's what internal auditing does for your organization. It says, all right, we see some activity that says that something is going on wrong. We just don't know what's causing this activity, but we see evidence. The internal auditor just basically sits there and says, all right, let's just go turn the light on. And then once they turn the light on, eventually they find out what's causing all of this quote unquote evidence that we're seeing. Right? That's what it does for your organization. Any other questions? Awesome. Awesome. If there are no other questions, I think I have done my duty for the day. I just want to help you guys to look good on paper so we can get you some funding, and the other facilitators will help you do that.
Yes, yes. Fred, please put your information in the chat if organizations wants to
Awesome.
reconnect. I'm
We'll
sorry,
do
Denise.
that.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I mean, go ahead, David. Yes. Thank you, Fred. Just to let everybody know, I've been typing like crazy in the chat, so you could always refer to that for some notes. And Christian Belton, you're up next. And again, I mentioned that she'll be speaking on donor relations because, again, like I said, donors have relationships with the organizations that they give to, and how do we get into those spaces and how do we maintain those relationships? Chris, you're free to go.
So good afternoon, everybody. I totally enjoyed Frederick's presentation. So much knowledge, so much wisdom, how to get that money, but use it the right way and to manage and protect the integrity of your organization and the funds, which is why you have to develop trust with these donor relationships. not just trust with your donor, but trust with your partners as well. I cannot figure out how to navigate my iPad with my screen so you guys can see my presentation. So I'm going to try to do it from my MacBook, but I will continue speaking here.
Would you like to send it to me and I can share it from here?
Yeah, that would actually work out.
Okay.
I could do that. So while I'm doing that, I'll just talk about briefly what it is that I do. I know I shared for a moment, but I have my own nonprofit. So that's why Frederick's presentation was so good for me, because as a smaller nonprofit, trying to make sure that you manage properly until you grow those things, and you are getting donations on Giving Tuesday or random gifts, you want to be accountable for that. So that was definitely beneficial. But if you would like to stay connected, I have ICU Vision Foundation. We focus on providing financial assistance for those who wear eyeglasses or contact lenses. A lot of insurance programs do not cover eyeglasses. And if they do, they cover like the bare minimum of the prescription. If you're like me, I've been wearing glasses since I was 3, and I have a heavy prescription. And so even with great insurance, it has been a struggle. And I didn't really understand how much money it was costing until I got grown and I had my job. And I was like, Ma, you've been paying this amount of money for my eyeglasses. And again, even with insurance, I like designer frames. And once my prescription is added on, you add the anti-glare, the anti-reflect, it's about $300 to $400, sometimes $500. And that's with insurance. So my thought was, what about the person who has a kid that's breaking the glasses and doesn't have money to keep getting those glasses? You have parents that will say, it's either the glasses or food on this table. But the truth of the matter is, if the child can't see the board, then they're squinting and their eyes are straining. And now you're dealing with educational challenges. Or so now the child's is now struggling when it comes to reading and writing. And now they want to keep your child back, when really, had the child gotten glasses, maybe that would have been the aid to help them be successful. I just sent it to Denise. So that's how I started ICU. It started as a project that I did under the PAP for the organization that I was working with in Atlanta, just to try to see how we could do it. And I developed a partnership with Lens Crafters. I don't know if you guys are familiar that oftentimes Lens Crafters has a doctor's office in the actual facility. The doctor's office is normally just connected because they're using that place. It's a rental space or what have you, but they are not a partner of Lens Crafters. So what I did with my foundation, we developed a partnership with the doctor's office and Lens Crafters. The doctor would conduct the eye exams for one fee for me. That was half of their normal fee that they would charge someone who doesn't have coverage. My organization would pay for the eye exam, and then Lens Crafters made the glasses completely free. It was a complete pair. My first project, we did about 50 children, and we focused on a low-income neighborhood in the city of Atlanta. And I have a video where parents are just thanking us and so excited, because I had a lady tell me, I didn't have time to buy him some glasses. You know, again, she was struggling and trying to figure it out. And so it's just a blessing to see how impactful that is. And, you know, you can't see, you don't know where you're going. So that vision is key. And like I said, that's how I started ICU. Denise, did you get the presentation?
Yes, but I wasn't ready to interrupt you yet. But we're ready to go. David's going to share it so I can continue to take notes, because I can't share screen and type at the same time. So
Okay.
There you go. Are you
Yep.
ready?
I'll be sharing it right now. Give me 1 second.
And I'm trying to connect this with my iPad, my Facebook family, so we could.
Oh, you're doing it big today.
Well, I invited actually the program manager she's actually the executive director for the organization I worked with in Atlanta, Sharon Denise Quinn, and she's from ATL. So I wanted her to, you know, be a part of this. Excellent. And maybe take these resources back to Atlanta.
Thank you for making us national.
Oh, this is what we have to do. So, like I said, I'm Christian Belton, and my presentation is Donor Relations and Fundraising 101. You can stay connected with me at www.keepitupwithchris.com, on all social media as Chrissy B or Christian Belton. So we can definitely connect afterwards. Slide 1. What is donor relations? It's the efforts of charity or nonprofit organizations to foster long-term relationships with donors who provide support. There is this myth that donor relations and stewardship are one, and they are two different things. Stewardship is tied to the gift that the donor gives, meaning where are we sending the money? What is this money being used for? And one cannot steward a donor, only their giving, but you can develop and cultivate a relationship with the donor. And so stewardship is a component of donor relations, not so much the same thing. It's just like with tithes and offering or any other gift you're giving, you're a good steward over your money, not necessarily a good steward over your donor. And so that's something that has to be key and memorable for people, because people get that confused in language and donors are looking at you like, you're not going to steward me, but you can steward my money once you be a good steward of my money or my gift. Organizations can engage, cultivate, and relate to the donors. And like I said, with stewardship being a part of the overall strategy. And we're going. Connection. Part of donor relations, the main core, I would say, is all about connecting with people. If you don't like to talk to people, you do not need to work in donor relations. A relationship without connection will not be successful. We learned that in our relationships, whether it be platonic or romantic. If there's no connection, there is no sustainment, and you do not feel appreciated or in tune with the person that you're in relationship with. So you have to look at the connection of the relationship. What is the purpose of the connection? Am I connecting with this partner to get more money, or am I connecting with this partner to get more visibility, which will in return produce more money? It will produce more donors. So you want to make sure that you're connecting for the right reason and identify the purpose of the connection. You got to identify the purpose of connection. If you don't identify it, then you're having purposeless conversation. And if there's no purpose, what is the point? So I always say that connection is key. That's one of my favorite lines to carry in life. Connection is key. And you want to make your donors feel safe. So that connection has to be genuine. So if you have a person working in donor relations that doesn't have a good personality, they don't like people, then you do not want them talking to your donors. They are your the first person that your people connect with your organization is the donor relations person. They're speaking on behalf of the CEO. For a small organization such as myself, I'm donor relations, I'm management, I'm all things. But as we grow, we want people that reflect the vision of the organization to work in donor relations, and they represent you when connecting and looking for your to get funds. What is the number one rule in fundraising? Well, the answer is right there, and it's ask. A lot of people miss that. They're like, oh, have a good pitch, or oh, have a great presentation. It is not that. It's asking. You can do all of that. You can talk a lot. You can share PowerPoints. You can go live on Facebook. You can send out pamphlets. But if you don't ask, nobody's going to give you anything. We know that in the scripture. Ask and you shall receive. You've got to ask for the money, and you can't be afraid to ask. And asking can happen in many different ways. But the key is to ask. When it's all said and done, you got to ask the person. You got to say, hey, can you help me? Some people prefer a more direct approach. Then you have others that are like, no, kind of pull back a little bit. But you got to make sure you ask. At the end of the day, after you've dressed it all up, don't forget to ask. I should have left that blank so that we could have guessed that. So I took some time to create an acronym for the word ask, and A is for acknowledgement, S, support, and K is kindle. So we're going to dig deeper with that. If I'm going too fast, please feel free to chime in, because maybe we could do Q&A as I talk. But remember that ask, A-S-K, that's acknowledgement, support, and kindle. Acknowledgement deals with knowing your donor. Don't ask anybody for something that you have not done your research on. You want people to feel comfortable. It's really important that when looking to gain relationships or get funds, You want the person to know that you know them. You want them to feel like you're interested in them. So knowing your donor is the foundation of building a successful long-term relationship. Gotta know them. Collecting data, a lot of companies use Salesforce, some use Classy, a lot of different database systems out there. Collecting data is key when developing the relationship, because from the data, you learn that this person may be connected to X, Y, and Z. And so that data helps you in conversation. Research the donor. What organizations have they previously donated to? Are they connected to the cause directly? You find that a lot of donors give because they have had a personal connection to your cause. So it's very important that you are aware of what your donor is involved in. It could be a cousin, it could be a family member, it could even be them, it could be a friend. You want to ask questions, and that's how you begin to build that organic conversation, which is why I said that people person mentality, it has to be there. It's got to be present. If not, someone's not going to feel comfortable to share. So acknowledgement is our first. And this begins the donor journey. You want to take your donors on a journey. And so it starts with the ask. And after you started with acknowledgement, that's letter A, you want to create a personalized welcome pack. I'm telling you, personalizing everything. People love to feel special. They love for you to take the time to write them a handwritten note, quarterly update. I always say start with the welcome letter, because on the journey, you want to build that expectation for communication, and you want to take them on a path of getting to know you. So in the first conversation, you're acknowledging them, you're talking about what you know about them, and then you follow up immediately with a welcome pack. And that welcome pack now takes everything that you've shared about you and your company or organization, and it's on paper. It's letting them know how they can see themselves in your vision. You want to invite them into your vision. You want them to see how they fit in the program plan for your organization. Support, that's our S. And I like to call this support tiers of giving. When I was preparing this, I was between support or status, but based on their support, you'll know the status or the tier in which your donor is. If you are avid giver, give to UNICF, so many other things, they have levels. They have bronze giving, they have gold, they have platinum. It's important that you establish the tiers of giving so people can know what their expectation is. People like to feel exclusive. Exclusivity is very important. Everybody wants to feel special. So when you establish those tiers, you create an opportunity for people to feel exclusive. And those tiers will help you with learning what to pitch, who to ask, what for. So you want to make sure you're establishing the levels at which your donors give. Most donors determine their level of giving based on their connection to the cause. So a lot of times your high class donors or your high dollar donors are people who are directly affected by the cause. A lot of people that give to lupus, when I was there, they had either lost a relative to lupus or they themselves had lupus. So you want to make sure that you are asking those questions, because that's how you can kind of, I don't want to say play on the emotions of people, but you can maximize their connection for your dollar, for your effort, for your cause. And they're driven by the mission and or your purpose. What is the mission of your organization? A lot of people give based upon your mission, based on how convincing you are that you believe in your mission or your purpose. So even when you're planning, I always say, don't get locked into one purpose. You should be, as an organization, redeveloping that mission and vision every year. Some would even suggest quarterly. What are our quarterly visions? If you have a one vision aspect for the whole organization and you break it down into quarters, this is effective because climate is always changing. We learned that now with 2020. Your PAPs probably look a lot differently for 2021. It could have been before on events. Now it might be more focused on visibility. You know what I'm saying? Where you're directing your attention, your money to. So you want to make sure that you understand the purpose so that you're able to properly communicate that to the donor. Kindle, igniting that relationship. I know that was a different type of word, but after you've acknowledged the donor, after you have gotten their support, you now want to ignite that relationship. You have lit the match and now it's time to go. The flame is hot. You got to communicate. Keep that relationship going. Stay in connection with your donor. Now, here's the thing. We are all receiving texts at times or emails, and sometimes it can be overkill. You don't want to do too much. And so even when we go back to learning the donor, acknowledging them and get to know them, questions like, do you like emails are very important. How often do you want to hear from us? But you want to make sure that you connect and kindle that relationship. People need to know what you're doing. Keep your donors in the know. Allow them to follow their gift. That's part of the journey. The journey starts with that acknowledgement. You get their support, you determine their status. And now we're going to kindle this relationship by following up with them. Your funds were used here. It did this. They need to know that. Every update doesn't have to be a hard ask. Every conversation doesn't have to end in how much more money you're going to give us. People like for you to build those conversations and relationships. And when they feel comfortable, once you built that trust, they're going to give simultaneously. They're going to start giving even without you asking. Does that make sense? So make sure you kindle that relationship. And next slide. Thank you goes a long way. You never want to forget to say thank you. You can never say thank you enough. When people giving you money, they love to hear thank you. They love for you to thank them. Thank the people. You got to say thank you. I would suggest that it's important that when doing your yearly plan, you create multiple ways of saying thank you to your donor. Whether it be an email, a phone call, a letter, a thank you note, you gotta have, there's about 4 different ways you should be saying thank you, but be creative with that. Spread it out so it's not overkill, like I said, but definitely say thank you. Create multiple ways to say thank you. And now with the climate of the world, things are not so much in person. So you gotta be creative now. You know, it could be a video. That's something different. You send a personalized video. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm thanking you for donating to the ICU Vision Foundation. These are ways that people are not expecting to be thanked. So you want to be very creative in the way you say thank you. And I've got some resources for you.
Oh, 1 second. Because lunchtime is getting near. If you haven't already put your email address in the chat, please do so now so we can get you those vouchers so that you're not hungry and rushing to get off this call. So throw your email in. That also goes for the speakers too. We want to feed you as well as you're pouring out. We want to pour in. Thank you. All right, Chris, go back.
Join in. Get your food. See, they're asking us to eat. Make sure you put your email in the chat so you can get what you need. Included some resources for you. I'll definitely keep my email. I didn't add that on there, but I'll put that in the chat as well in my website. It's definitely important to do a lot of research. Like I said, finding connections, some grants, different things out there for you with donor relations. Classy is a great website. I meant to put that on there. It's classy.com, CLASSY.com. It's a great giving tool. It allows your donors to create groups so that they can do challenges. I love Classy. It's one of my favorite giving tools. And I think that might be the last slide. So I wanted to just give you those things, but let's talk about visibility. Right now, it's important that you stay visible. You want to stay on the radar of your donors, but you don't want to be annoying. You don't want to do too much because then they're like, okay, I'm going to opt out. And then you get the emails like, please take me off your mailing list. It's important that you strategize your visibility. With the limitations of even getting together, it's important that even your team become more innovative. You know what I'm saying? And you look up different ways to create that camaraderie, because you can't necessarily be around people for whatever your cause is. Meetings like this are good. I would even say donor welcome parties are awesome. You know, let's welcome to our community. You want to keep that engagement. Visibility plus engagement will produce funding. And visibility plus engagement. You don't want to be visible and then you don't talk to people or you don't communicate. You want to make that donor feel like they're a part of it. That's why that donor relations is key. And whoever is working in your donor relations has to literally bleed and lead your vision. I see a question. It came up. Let me see if I can do that. Do I click it? All right. Do you suggest email or phone call for introducing your organization, the donor, in order to start the process towards getting it? So I feel like it is important to do phone calls, but that would probably be step 2. I would do more like video emails, include a very personalized video and introducing that organization, and then tell them you would love to follow up with a phone call. Once a person expressed interest, then I'd make the phone call. And especially after you get the money, you want to call them and say thank you. I would do the phone call, a handwritten note, and the email. And that's really the whole process of saying thank you. What app or tool do you use for video emails? So I'm an iPhone person. I hope everyone on here is part of the Apple church. I love Apple. We have great cameras on the iPhone. So I typically just do it on iMovie. Or you could do like on Instagram really quickly and save the short clip, because I'm not like a video editor, but iMovie is free. It comes with the iPhone. Don't know if Samsung or Android has that, but on iMovie, you're able to edit, you're able to insert screens and just stick it into the email. It's really simple. And you know, people don't say this a lot, but you can YouTube how to market and how to learn how to do those little things. If you're not tech savvy like me and you don't have a staff, I YouTube certain things to try to figure it out. And Canva, Canva, that's a great app. When you're creating newsletters, they already have templates. And if I'm not mistaken, Canva does have the animation ability for you to do some animation. So Canva is really good. Yeah, Dr. Daniel said it's easy to use. It really is. So it's not hard. You can get on there. I would also suggest, I don't know if I said this, when you are making that outreach and you're cultivating that relationship, be attentive to seasons. You know, right now, season's greetings. You want to send out thank you cards or holiday greetings, even if they haven't donated. We're saying hello from so-and-so organization. A lot of times, if you stay visible, I keep saying that, visibility with engagement, it will produce funding. A lot of people do not have funds because they're not visible. How can we give to someone we don't know to give to? How do we know there is even a need if we're not visible? And you don't only want to be visible during Giving Tuesday. You know, some people come out every year only on Giving Tuesday to give. I want to know what you were doing every other Tuesday. There are 52 Tuesdays in a year. I need to see you. I want to know what you're doing. I want to know an update. And everybody that gets an update doesn't necessarily have to be a donor already. You can do general updates to gravitate and get a new audience. Don't stop chasing an audience. Don't get comfortable with your audience that you have. That research is key too. Even when you look at looking for donations, I research, I'll tell you what I'm working on now. The African American Museum in DC. I went and researched who helped fund that project. If you go on their website, they show you who helped fund it, who helped fund this project, who gave what, who did X amount of dollars. You can go see. Now then go research that organization. Those are ways to find more gifts. And you got to really get out there now. It's harder now because again, the world has changed. Our climate has changed. So you got to go after that money harder than you've ever had to go after. So that research is key. Use LinkedIn, but don't stop researching. Research should not only happen at the top of the year. It really needs to be a weekly thing. Whoever's in donor relations, that has to be part of their assignment for the week. How many more donors did you research? What organizations? Who gave what to where? And it's tedious.
I'm sorry, which social media platform do you think is more effective when you're looking for donors? LinkedIn, Facebook, IG. I see a lot of big corporations on Twitter. So what do you think is more effective for
So
groups?
for me, I use all three. Not my LinkedIn, not so much because I think LinkedIn takes a little more time with certain posting. Um, you'd be surprised. Instagram, that's why Canvas is good to have and have those visibility, maybe ads or what have you, because Instagram, everybody's on Instagram. Twitter, everyone's on Twitter. But for getting a donor, hosting conversations and stuff, I would say Facebook and use the others to kind of just like funnel out little tidbits, like, hey, we're doing this, connect with us here. And the truth, they're all connected. I use an app called Hootsuite. So when I post, I'm posting simultaneously on everything. With Hootsuite, there is no excuse because literally you can connect all of your networks. You can time it. So that's why whoever's doing your media has to really know the importance of scheduling. They need to research when to post, where to post, that type of thing. So I would suggest Hootsuite. And it just depends on like the announcement, but put it on all three. Because like Twitter, you're going to run out of characters. Facebook gives you more character space. So if you're going to write a whole monologue, you know what I'm saying? You can do it on Facebook. If you did it on Twitter or IG, you're just going to post a link. But I prefer Facebook. You can talk on Facebook, but now they're making all these apps where you can host the conversation. And quiet as it's kept. Hootsuite, HOOTSUITE. Quiet as it's kept. Clubhouse. People are talking about Clubhouse. It's a new app. It's in the beta phase right now. And so I'm going to try to send the link to this group so you guys can do it. It's basically what we're doing right now, right? We're hosting a conversation. People do this 24/7, and it's a lot of doctors. It's a lot of influential people just having conversations about random stuff. It could be giving, it could be politics. Oh, it's only available on iOS. You got to be Apple to get to get Clubhouse. But that's because it's in the beta phase right now. But it's such a great networking tool because not everybody's on it. Only I don't want to say only smart people, but only those who are looking for ways to network and connect are on there. And I was on a call and somebody got like $10,000. They happened to be in the room with some big dude. I don't know who he was. He said, I want to donate to the cause. So you got to be like hit to those type of things. Check out Clubhouse now.
So that's actually a great segue. That last statement that you made is a great segue into a question that I see Dr. Dunkley asked. Any essential elements that you would or that you should have in your pitch when you do ask?
Yes. Your purpose, your mission. So your purpose, why did you start? Because most people want to know why. What made you do it? If you were to ask me why did I start my organization, my answer is going to be, I've been wearing glasses since I was 3 years old. I wanted to do something that I personally could connect with. And I know I need my glasses. They're essential to my everyday life. So if someone doesn't have this tool and they need it, I wanted to provide it for them. And then you go through, now that opens up the door for statistics. You know what I'm saying? So I would say have your why, your who, what, and why. Those are the three essential components. Who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and what you're gonna do, what you plan to do. Because you need the money to do what you plan to do. So yes. And it's important that you take time to really hone in on your vision. I was in a training this week and we sat at a round table with 6 people to develop a vision for an organization. And it's amazing how, buzzwords come out in those conversations. And we went 2 days trying to create a vision. And when we finished, it was amazing. We had the vision, we had the tagline, we had the mission. So it takes time to build that. But who, what, and why? Any more questions?
Is that all? That was awesome. Jazz hands. So I just want everybody to take a second to check up. How long should the newsletter be?
So, we live in a day where people don't like to read. So have lots of pictures and have little blurbs. 1 page is good. And videos. People don't take the time to sit there and read. They're not going to read. I think they say you only have like 30 seconds to make the impression. And really on the internet, it's probably like 10. By the time somebody scrolls, if your color doesn't even catch their attention, they're like moving on. If they see too much paragraphs, moving on. People are not really reading. If you can't do it, I would say honestly, 5 sentences or less connected with the picture, don't write it. Because you got to be able to get to the point. Getting to the point, we live in a day and age where people don't take time. You know, their time is money. So if I'm spending too much time, you didn't talk to me and you never got to the point of what you, they're out of here, they're checking out. So you want to make sure you hit it and quit it, like get to it. Sorry, but I'm just, you know, like seriously, it's like a sermon. Bishop Jake says 30 minutes is long enough for a great sermon and too long for a bad one. You get about 30 minutes to impress me. And if I'm not impressed by 15, I'm kind of like, we done read the scripture for 7, gave me an intro, you know, people are mechanical. They're thinking about their time. So when I'm looking on this screen and all I see is words, where are the pictures? Because some people can't read. And some people with money can't read. They need pictures. So they see that you've been helping little kids in the community. Okay, I'm going to give to that. They didn't even read what y'all did, you know. So.
Right.
Very true. Very, very true. Any other questions?
Awesome.
Feel free to unmute yourself. Any other questions?
How's everybody feeling so far? Okay. Have we all checked our emails for our lunch vouchers?
Yes.
I just want to make sure everybody got them.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
No worries.
before we move on. And next is Jennifer. Are you ready? Do we need a bio break? Everybody good? Okay. Well, Jennifer is up next, and as a fellow grant writer, I'm excited. I have my jazz fingers ready for typing. So, guys, expect for this chat portion to be on fire, because this is my lane. I'm ready when you are. Unmute.
All righty. Hi, guys. Listen, I have been listening in the background. I'm kind of multitasking, but I've definitely enjoyed the previous presenters, and I'm just excited for what this afternoon is going to continue to unfold for us. I'm going to share my screen. I prepared a PowerPoint, and if at any point you guys would like a copy of this, you are welcome to it. But I just wanted to I'm a teacher by trade, so this is kind of what I do. Oh my gosh, why was it not enough? Okay, so here we are. I was asked to talk about how to get grant funding, doing the grant writing and the research. And so that is what my assignment is. I'm kind of known as the nonprofit expert or the grant guru. It was a name that was given to me. Someone said to me the other day, she said, "You're like the grant whisperer." Again, I started in the world of grant writing when I was an intern. I was doing an internship at the Kingsport Housing Authority. I had graduated from Tuskegee with my political science degree, had gone to East Tennessee State working on my master's degree, was on my way to law school, and my class assignment for the semester was to write a grant. And so I was doing an internship here at the Housing Authority. I wrote a grant for HUD. It was a drug and alcohol elimination grant. I did not know what it was. I had gone to a couple of trainings and workshops that Mr. Spann, who at that time was the executive director, and it was like Chinese, right? I did not understand what they were saying because I didn't have a program. I didn't understand nonprofit. I just knew I had to turn in an assignment. So I actually wrote it. It took me about 6 weeks to follow the instructions. I turned it in and Mr. Spann said, "Go ahead and submit it." And I did. And as a result of that, it was funded for $250,000. As an intern for the Housing Authority, I created programs and wrote grants for probably almost close to $3 million. Brand new programs. I was so young, I didn't know what I didn't know, okay? And so I relate a lot to when people say to me, "Jen, I don't know. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do first. I don't know." There's a whole bunch of I don't knows. And I am in that lane. I was in that lane. And so moving forward in working with some amazing nonprofit organizations, working as the donor relations person, working as the grants director, working as the director of development, working as the events planner, and then the executive director. I was afforded an amazing opportunity where I just kind of was like it just all clicked for me. And having worked in all of the positions, starting as a grant writer, I realized that there's a triangle that I use. The triangle is program. You've got to have a program. And with that, you've got to have the finances to manage that program. And then the fund development is the bottom base of that equation. So it's not operating in a silo, it all works together. In order for me to have a wonderful program, I've got to have appropriate finances. How do I get those finances? I've got to do some development work. And with that development work includes grant development, fund development in terms of donors and other corporate support. Back in 2005, I had everybody and their mother literally asking me, I need help, I need help, I need help, I need help. Can you help? Can you help? And so I began teaching smaller nonprofits the things and the secrets that I learned working with the larger, well-funded, fully funded organizations. And everyone has to have a program. Everyone has to have a community that they serve. Everyone has to have an organizational structure. But what I found was the huge disconnect was the process and the systems of how to put that together, particularly for smaller organizations that may not have been able to hire a person such as myself to do these designated tasks. And again, as an executive director, I understand wearing all the hats, and I had to create a system where I could get it all done and not be inundated. All right. And so I really learned that the right action at the right time produces the right results. And many times we are sometimes afraid to take the action. All right. Take the action. So we want us to today, I hope that you're walking away with some action steps that you can begin to do in a strategic and an effective way. All right. Where do I get grant funding? That's probably the number one question that I get. Where do I get grant funding, Jen? How do I get a grant, Jen? Can I get a grant for this, Jen? Or is this a great idea for me to get grant funding, right? Is this a great idea? And so I want to talk about what a grant is and what a grant is not, okay? What a grant is and what a grant is not. Sometimes the grant may not be the right solution, okay? It may not be the right solution for what you want. We know we need money, right? I need money. But is a grant the right solution, okay? And when it's not the right solution, it's not when you're just getting started and you have an idea. I have an idea and I want a grant, right? I have this great idea. Let me go get a grant. So what is a grant? A grant is the funds that are given to an organization based upon that organization's ability to meet the needs of the funder. All right, I'm gonna say that again. What is a grant? A grant are the funds that are given to the organization based upon the needs of the funder. All right? So when you say I have an idea, that is not when you decide to go get a grant, right? Because it's not as if there is a money tree somewhere that says, I'm going to fund your idea. They are funding, as your donors will, what they are interested in. All right? So the application says, we are an organization that meets your criteria, that meets your area of need, that meets your interests. All right? So a grant is not good when you have an idea without it being fleshed out in terms of I understand the program, I understand who we're going to serve, I understand when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and how we have the ability to report back. All right? A grant is not good when you need money fast. I need money like yesterday. All right? That's not when you go get a grant or when you start applying for a grant, okay? Because a grant is a process, all right? So grant funding is not also when you need ongoing funds. Now, it is a part of your ongoing plan, but we don't run out of money and then turn around and say, I need a grant, okay? And so those are some things that I just want you to think about, okay? So these are the things that are questions. I want you guys to write this down. I'm a person that says, you know, we learn by seeing, we also learn by doing, we also learn by processing. All right. So these are the questions that I want you all to consider when you are preparing to think about grant funding. Have you created a needs list? All right. Have you created a needs list? Now, before you start researching for your grant, you want to make sure exactly what those funds are needed for. Okay. Now, I know we all want a building, we want a bus, we want a transitional home, we want all of these things, but you've got to be able to understand what is going to be needed to execute and implement your program. So if I say I need, Jen, money because I want to start a shelter, all right, then you also need to understand what is it going to entail to run that shelter. Okay. Now, when I speak to most organizations, they don't have a budget. They don't have a budget. They don't have a clear path of what I need to operate or even what I need to grow. And then how do I maintain that? How do I maintain a building? How do I maintain staff? How do I maintain the resources that are going to be needed for my program? So creating your needs list is first, okay? So if you have a shelter, I need insurance, I need water, I need electricity, I need furniture, I need food. All of those needs need to be also included in the budget. Now, what is a budget, Jan? A budget is expenses. We all know expenses, Lord. I know how to spend up some money, right? But I also have to understand the revenue. That in order for my budget to balance, God help us say balance. In order for our budgets to balance, I've got to know what my expenses are and then what is my revenue plan. My revenue comes from corporations, from individuals, from grants, from events, from in kind, all right, from products and services. All of these things, also your funder wants to know. When you're writing a grant, they're wanting to know what is it that you need, the expense side, and where's the money coming from? If you say, Jen, I don't know how much money I need. Well, then how do we know how much money to ask for if we don't know how much we need? Our need is based upon what does it need to run the organization and what does it need to run the program, all right? You do not start your organization and only run a program. You gotta run the organization. You gotta know what it is that you're doing, why what you're doing is important, all right? And then have you prioritized your needs list? So as it relates to your program, have you prioritized? All right, I want to start a shelter, right? But then we've also got to prioritize what's going to happen in that shelter. What are the first things that I need? Prioritize and focus on that prioritized list. Okay, many of us are just kind of like winging it. Oh my gosh, our minds are racing and we've got so much that we want to do, but we haven't created that prioritization. First, I need the technology installed. That's what I need to do first. Then I need to be able to get the staff in place. I need to do that next. Then I need to be able to have access to the people that are going to be in the program. Prioritizing helps you create that strategic plan. Oh my gosh, many of us are not even working on a strategic plan. How can we do that, right? There are 3 reasons that organizations fail, only 3, and money is not one of them. Only 3, and money is not one of them. The first is I do not have a strategic plan. And as it relates to the grant, the funder is saying, what are the priorities of the people that you are serving? If you don't have a plan for meeting that need, how the ding dang devil is that thing gonna happen? It's not, right? So not having a strategic plan, not being able to articulate what impact, not say impact, articulate impact, not say impact. Articulate impact. What does that mean? That means you're able to share and show. Hallelujah, somebody. I'm talking to the back. Share and show change. Your funders want to know about the change. They're funding the change, not your activities. I'm always saying activity is not impact. Activity is not impact. And many of us have a lot of activity. I want to feed, I want to clothe, I want to give this, I want to share food, I want all these activities. But without those activities producing a change, that means they come in, they are involved and engaged in your program, you've prioritized their need, and you know then what's going to cause them to leave your program, never to come back again. All right, change. That's the impact, okay? So prioritizing is key. Number one, not having a plan. Number two, not being able to articulate impact. And then number three is the person or the leader that doesn't know how to do 1 and 2. You got a great idea, but you don't have capacity. That impacts the money. Money is not the root of our problem. Money is the fruit. Money is not the root of our problem. All right? The fruit of not having a plan, not having the ability to articulate impact to the donor, to the funder, to those we are in partnership with, results in no money. 98% of your donors, 98% of your grants give because of the change, not the activity. So we should be speaking impact. And that's what your grant proposal is. Your grant proposal says, this is what the need is of the people that we're serving. This is how we're going to change their circumstance. And then this is at the end of our program, what impact will look like. They're funding the end. Am I being clear? Hello, somebody. All right. Then it is, have you determined all of your costs? If you say to me, Jen, I don't have a budget, then I'm saying to you, how do you know that what you're doing costs anything? How do we know, right? And if you're giving it away now, then just keep giving it away, honey. You don't have to give it away. That's not how it's set up, okay? But if you don't put in place the costs, then how do we know? How does the funder know? How do you know what is needed to grow the organization, to grow the program, to expand the program? Let me say this. You cannot pay a salary and not know what that salary is. You can't say, I want to hire somebody, but then you don't know what that cost is. Okay. And that cost is not just a one-time cost. That means there's an ongoing cost that every single month, every 2 weeks, whatever, you want to pay that person. You want to be able to grow the program and to deliver the services. You have to determine the cost. Where do I get the cost, Jen? I don't know how much things cost. I know that's always people say to me. I'm like, y'all can spend the money, but you can't tell me how much it costs. You done spent all this money. Jen, I done spent everything out of my pocket. Well, then what did it cost? I don't know. I was just spending money. You can't run your house like this. You cannot run your house like this. All right? You cannot say, oh, I think it's a great idea. Let me go buy me a house. And then I get in there and I can't pay the bills. You started a business. You started a business. And the resources that are necessary to grow your business, you gotta count the cost. All right. You are designated as a nonprofit, but you are a business. It takes money to run a business. It takes leadership to run a business. And those 3 reasons are at the root of why we don't have money. I don't know what it costs, Jen. I'm just spending what I don't have. And then I get to the place where my wallet is empty. And then I'm desperate for more money. Now, let me tell you what this looks like to the funder. The funder looks at this and says, well, you're going to do the same thing with our money. You're going to take our money, you're going to spend it all up, and then you're going to get to a place where you don't know how to maintain and continue. This is a basic business practice, okay? A basic business practice. You've got to know the cost. All right. So I want you all to begin to document what are all of my costs. And let me say this, don't be afraid of a little comma. It's just a little comma, y'all. If you got to put some commas in there, go ahead and put some commas. It's just a comma. All right. Put down all of your costs. I know y'all get scared. You get scared when it hits 5,000. You get scared when it hits 10,000. You get scared when it gets 100. It's a comma. And if you don't understand the cost, then you're not running an effective business to deliver maximum impact. Do you understand what I'm saying? This is not about you. This is about the impact that you're making, okay? Have you created a timeline? Have you created a timeline of how long your program will need to be in order for it to be effective? Now, many of us want to do a whole lot. I want to feed, I want to clothe, I want to shelter, I want to, for how long? I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months. And at the end of that time, if it's a 12-month program, by month 9, they should be ready to transition. So you now have a timeline of effectiveness, a timeline of resources, a timeline of result that you should be able to see. All that's in the grant proposal. All that's a part of the program design right there. All right. You've got a timeline of what people look like when they come in. How long does it take before them to start seeing change and implementing change? And then what is the timeline for them to leave your organization? While they're there is where the cost is. While they're a part of your program, that's where the cost is. And your funder wants you to be able to measure and manage the cost and share with them the result of that cost. Okay. Now, this is where most people say to me, Jen, I just want the money. Just tell me, Jen, where can I find the money, right? Let's just skip over all the blah, 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 wah, wah, wah. I want the money, okay? So how to find the right grant funder, okay? Just like there's the right donor, there's the right grant funder. Not everybody is going to be your donor. Not everyone is going to be your grant funder. So how do you find the right funder? You're finding the right funder based upon their area of interest and your area of interest, all right? So the process of knowing which kind of funding you need. Do I need funding for technology? Do I need funding for and everybody wants operations, right? Everybody wants operations. I want operations and I want money to build my infrastructure and to build a building. But what's going to go in that building? What's going to happen inside of it? Okay. Beyond the operations, I need technology. I need marketing. I need staff. I need development. I need capacity. Okay, so you knowing the needs of your organization and the needs of your program is what's going to match you to the funder. Now, let me say this, the farce or the idea that there is going to be one funder who is going to fund your entire organization from back door to front is not realistic. Can I just bust that bubble? Can I just tell you the truth right now? All right, let me just tell you. Stop it. Stop. 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 Okay? Stop. That's not going to happen. Nor is that one funder going to fund your organization into perpetuity. No, they're not. All right? They're going to give you a timeline, a year, possibly 2, maybe 3, but they are going to want and expect some things from you that you can do exactly what you said. Now, that's going to be the easy part, all right? I'm going to just say that. But when we're looking for funding, we're looking for funding based upon, again, what the funder is interested in funding, all right? It is not, Jen, I need a grant. I need a grant, and I'm not sure or settled on what I want to do. I've got to know what the funder is interested in. If they're interested in technology, then your business is to tell them, the funder, how technology is involved and necessary for your impact. So did I say impact? Jesus. They're funding impact through technology, right? And so because 98% of them are interested in the impact, you've got to be able to show and argue and position how technology is relevant to impact. Now, I don't want just a whole bunch of computers, and I want everybody in the organization to have a computer. To do what? For what? Okay? Because I need a new computer, Jen. That's not the funder's business, okay? Their business is impact. Their business is funding impact. So let's say that they're interested in funding capacity, okay? They're interested in funding possibly marketing. Let's say they're interested in funding your program area or topic. You've got to be able to show and share how whatever they're interested in funding is relevant to impact. Okay? You want to be able to share your story of impact in different ways. Technology, why is technology important? Now, let me just say this. If you can share it in a grant application, then you can share it to an individual. You can share that then to a corporation. Did I say articulating impact was number 2? All right. So being able to share that impact message is important. That's what I learned as an intern. I thought, oh my gosh, so you mean that's all I got to do is tell you what we do and why we do it and why it's important? That's it. What we do, why we do what we do, and why is it important? Why is it important to the donor? Why is it important to the funder? All right. Talking about the impact that's relevant to them. Knowing your program is key. Okay. Use the 3-way fit test. The 3-way fit test. You want to find grants using a 3-way fit test, the geographic fit. These funders who are interested in funding in certain areas, they're interested in funding New York, they're interested in funding the United States, they're interested in funding international. That's going to be key to when you're finding it. That programmatic fit, all right? Is it an opportunity that meets your program needs that aligns with theirs, okay? So if I am interested in sheltering, I'm then not going to a program that's talking about community gardens. Okay, many of us see the money element, but we don't see the fit element. There has to be a fit in order for the funder to review it. That's the philanthropic fit. Again, being in alignment with what the funder wants. Now, not only am I a grant writer, guys, I'm also a grant reviewer. And let me say this. As a grant reviewer, out of 100 proposals, only 20 of them are going to get funded. Out of 100 proposals, only 20 are going to get funded. Why? Because of this fit situation and not being able to articulate the impact. Okay? You've got to be able to say not only what the need is, not the need of, I need a building, I need a bus, I need this. No, the need is, these are the things that are essential that we are requesting funds for so that we can deliver the program, the needs of the people that we're serving, the needs that are going to be met through the change that we are producing through our program. All right. So knowing how to find your grant opportunities is really knowing your program and knowing how to make the fit. Just like in the donor world, right? In the individual world, the conversation world, making that fit connection. All right. Getting to know your funder is going to be really key. Knowing what they fund, knowing what their areas of interest are, knowing how often they give funds for, knowing who they've given money for previously. Okay, knowing that. How do I know that, Jen? It's nothing but a Google. Let me say this about Google. Uncle Google, all right? Uncle Google. Uncle Google is awesome. However, Uncle Google has never run a program. Uncle Google has never raised any money. So do not spend your life. Don't spend the good years of your life. Don't spend the good years of your life chasing down Google, all right? Call the organization. make connection directly with the organization. All right. Google cannot do that for you. Google cannot think for you. You are smarter than Google, believe that or not. All right. Listen, I've been doing this. I'm older than AOL. I'm older than your laptop. I am older than Google. I am older than let's see. I'm older than the .net. I'm older than your printer. All right. I'm telling you, I've been doing this a long time. So before Google, you have the ability to articulate the need for your organization and the impact. Do not trust Google to do that for you. Okay? Do not do that. I don't know why I went off on that tangent. I felt that spirit. Can I Google it? Can I Google it? No. 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 That's just the end of that. No. The whole sentence is no. All right? All right. Now I know people want to know, where do I find grants, Jen? Where do I find grants? Because everybody done heard nothing I said. They just want to know where the money is, right? I just want the money, Jen. Just tell me the money. The money, go to Grant Gopher. All right. Grant Gopher has some great resources for grant announcements and so forth. Funds for NGOs is another one. Philanthropy News Digest is another great space, and Grant Station Insider. Grant Station Insider. Okay. Now, I'm going to answer some questions, okay? But I want to reiterate a few things. What is a grant? A grant is funds. Now, I want you guys to think about how you spend your money. How do you spend your money? All right. Somebody come rolling up on you and ask you for some money. And depending on how much they ask for, you may say, I don't know. But what you're going to say is, what are you going to use the money for? What's this money for? That's what the grant application says. What's the money for? What are you going to do with my money? Now, we don't have a problem spending other people's money. We ain't got no problem spending other people's money. But there is no such thing as free money. If it were free, you wouldn't need an application. If it were free, there wouldn't be criteria. So you then want to approach the grant process saying, I want to make sure that my request for money is sound, that I understand the needs of the community. I understand the gap of services and how our organization is going to meet that gap. That's what your program is, a gap of service, a gap of information and knowledge, not just your idea, not just something I want to do because I think it's something that I didn't have. And so I create this without understanding that you're serving a community. It is community funds that make a community difference. That's what the grant funder wants to see. They want to know, how many people are you going to serve? How are they going to be changed as a result of your program? Okay. And they want to know how you're also going to keep it going. What are your plans and paths for ongoing funding? Now, I want us to just take a moment. Can we just do an exercise really, please? Because when we start talking about money, we get tight. We start thinking about, I don't know, there's not enough. What if I don't have enough? Oh my God, I'm going to spend all my money. What if I fail? What if this doesn't work? What if no one thinks this is a great idea? I want you to just inhale with me. Inhale. Exhale. Y'all, there is no shortage of money. All right? I want you to inhale. My mission matters. I want you to inhale one more time. My program is about change and impact. All I got to do is articulate that. You've got to know it to do it. You got to know what you're doing. How am I going to make this change? And what does that change look like? That is not like I got to get the calculations of how to get to the moon by Monday at noon. It's not like that. It's about taking the vision, hello somebody, and making it plain. And that's where Google jumps in, because we want Google to make it plain, and Google cannot make it plain. Y'all have spent too many hours, much time on Google, and it has not done it. It can't. Let me just stop that. It cannot. You have got to know your community. You've got to know the needs of the people, and you've got to know the path to meeting that need. That's what your program is. It is to meet the need. What does a grant funder want to know? Tell me about the need. How are you going to meet it? And what is that going to cost? You've got to be able to speak that. How do you speak it? Answer those questions I just talked about. What are the needs of my program? How am I prioritizing those things? Some may be short-term, some may be long-term. And being able to measure your impact. All right? Don't say impact. Measure the impact. How many people are we going to serve? Of those served, what does change look like? That's the outcome. How long does it take to do that? That's your timeline. And based upon the time, what materials, what supplies, what staff, what is required to bring about that change, that's the cost. Most of us go from, I have an idea, to I need a grant. And then we get stuck in the, what am I supposed to say, Jen? It's all confusing to me, Jen. I don't know where to begin. We skip some steps. I got to know what the need is first. We are organizations that meet the need of the people, and how that need impacts the community. All right. All right. Are there any questions? I hope. Oh my God, I hope.
First thing I want to say is I was supposed to be taking notes, but I was so busy being the amen section over here that I forgot to type. And by the time I realized I'm supposed to be typing, you're moving on. So I do ask that you send the presentation so that we can get it out to people, because I was no help today. Issa, do you turn on your mic? You can ask. We have a question.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me well?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Jen, for a very powerful presentation, and for the presenters before you. This has definitely been a blessing. I want to thank Showing Hearts, David, Denise, everybody for putting it together. It's just been phenomenal. So my name is Issa. I'm here in Queens, Farmers Boulevard Community Development Corporation. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. My question, I'm not quite sure how to frame it, but so I come from a little bit more of a business, entrepreneurship, and even real estate world and mentality in terms of what I'm accustomed to. Even the other nonprofits that I kind of glean insight from, like you said, they're really businesses that are structured as not-for-profit, but they run as businesses. Mm-hmm. And in that business world, what gets funding, aside from the program and the articulable impact of the program, is the team, the management team, the who's on the team, who's going to be the one executing the program, or the ones executing the program once you have this funding. And so the conundrum, or the catch-22 that I find myself in for some years now, is how do you build a team that can execute this vision at the scale that we're designing it, without first having the funding to pay to build out this team, to put people on payroll, right? So that's kind of the conundrum. I want to hear you kind of speak to, how do you make that jump from being, a nonprofit that is funded under $50,000 a year to being a nonprofit that then is funded $500,000 and more per year? How do you make that jump? And then I guess the second part of that question, or goes along with it, how do you engage a grant writer, and how do you pick one, or how do you engage one with a compensation structure where, well, in a compensation structure that makes sense, meaning you're not necessarily paying thousands of dollars for them to help write the grant per se, but you do want to compensate them upon success. Is that done, and how do you do that correctly?
Okay, so let's talk about the business component, all right? Everything that's big was once small. And many times we jump out the box without thinking about how do I grow in a systematic and a strategic way to go from a 50 or $50,000 budget to $1 million budget. How do we grow is impact, right? Your business your product is impact, right? So like Starbucks coffee product, McDonald's product burger, your product is impact. And so the more ways that you're able to show the value and the reason and the value and the capacity of growth comes from the impact conversations, right? The donors that you're having. I'm talking to an individual donor. I'm telling them that our impact, and this is why we need to grow. We need to grow because the need is so great. We need to grow because there is so much work that needs to be done. But I've got to be able to share with them who's giving us the money why that's important to them, not just to us, right? We know we want to grow. But I've got to be able to engage them on the why now. Why now do we need to grow? Why now is their resources important? So when you start small by being able to identify the areas that you can achieve the greatest impact the quickest. Oh, hello, somebody, because now I'm able to share and show what we have done with the impact message, how we have done it, and this is now the rationale for more growth and their investment in the growth. The investment from the donor, the investment from the partner, the investment from the corporations and from the funder says, I believe in your impact and what you're doing is great. And we do want to now help and support your growth. So you having that conversation of what did we do with $50,000 and what more could we have done with $75,000? And within $100,000, this is what we're going to do. So you're not going to be able to grow from 50 to a $1 million without being able to show and share what you've done, right? Starbucks can't say, we started with coffee. Now we started putting in meals, and then we started putting in cups, and then we started adding on for more areas of product. You have the same product. You've got your program as a product. You've got your reach as showing proof of your product. You've got the numbers of people that you have served and that you could serve if you were to grow. That impact message is what's going to cause you to grow. Am I being clear before I move on to the second question? Okay.
Yes, you're being clear. I understand. It sounds like an organic growth that's based upon demonstrating impact. I guess the challenge that I have. So I'm, the executive director of our nonprofit, and it's a part-time thing. It's bottom line. My full-time, I have to work. I work as an attorney, self-employed, but work as an attorney, and then do the nonprofit stuff with the time that I allot to that, and based on the sacrifices that my wife and I are able to make. But I recognize that the nature of the impact that we're really trying to make cannot be done on a part-time basis. Maybe me just kind of overseeing things, sure, but there have to be people that are digging deep into this stuff on a full-time basis, because we're really talking about economic development, developing properties, developing workforce, labor, not heavy duty, but it can't be done justice cannot be done to it when doing it on a part-time kind of here and there basis. We'll stay at a certain level of impact if we only are able to do it on a part-time basis. If I'm able to hire a few people full-time, then I'm able to now ratchet up and say, hey, we have this team that's able to perform. Now we're able to manage that $500,000, that $1 million, and produce fruit from that. But it just can't be done part-time.
Okay, so if you're producing fruit right now where you are, right, then you are inviting and engaging others to join in that effort. If you are producing fruit right now, then you are having conversations and strategic conversations with those that can help you. And it may not be that everyone starts at full time. It may be that you bring on the key person that has the greatest capacity to manage the position full time while managing others part time. But while what is that person managing, right? They're managing the execution of that which is going to produce the change. And now you take that and begin to share and show that with others who could support it as other investors. Okay. So that's a deeper conversation, but one is that it's very strategic. Not everybody can be hired at the same time to do what the resources are not there to do, but you can grow based upon what you have done and what you plan to do moving forward. Okay.
And may I offer something?
Yes.
The reason why I chose Showing Hearts was because it embodied this belief that I had that there's a great deal of redundancy in the nonprofit world. And I think it's very important for us to know that we don't have to reinvent wheels. And if there are existing programs currently in operation, you can pilot a program through someone else or somewhere else that has the infrastructure that can execute your program under your name and then undergird you in your growth. And so you don't necessarily have to use just your organization, but you can find ways to get your programs in other places with other people who are already doing the work. And that gives you the exposure, the access to their donors, the access to their clients, and it increases your reach. And over time, that support translates into you getting more funding and everything you need to grow independently.
And many times we try to take on, just to her point, to doing everything ourselves. And that's just not realistic. You are a community-based organization working with others to achieve it, right? So there are other people who are being paid, who have already positions to do some of the things that you don't have to do, but you can work in cooperation or partnership with them. Now, to your second question about hiring a person to do the grant writing, I say that you hire a person who understands program design and development. I say that you hire a person that understands how to articulate the various impact messages to go in to meet the various funding needs. Now, obviously, there are people who have different levels of experience in that. And based upon your budget, you might want to learn how to do it yourself. Or if you hire someone, there are funding practices that for me, I can't take money out of a grant that's been paid for your program, right? So I know that a lot of people say, well, can I just pay you after, we get the funding? No, you can't do that, okay? So you want to hire someone within your budget, or you learn it yourself. Now, most people say, well, Jen, I don't want to. Then you want to make sure that you have picked and selected a person who could give you a value, even if it's I know for me, I do a master grant proposal for those people who can't afford to hire me to do, on a longer term basis. But there's lots of ways to get it done based upon your budget. But let me say this. You can't say, I want you to build a house that I want to sell, and then I'll pay you after it gets sold. You want to be able to hire a person that's going to get you the greatest result. You got to know what the result is, but you also got to count the cost, right? That it costs you more money not to invest in a professional to do it. And then you don't have the money, you're not meeting the deadlines, than if you were to just say, you know what, this is an investment in my business that I need to make. So, your pocketbook, your bank account, and everything is about strategy. And you don't have to be a full-time executive director to be successful in your work that you're doing. But you do have to be strategic and understand, how do I prioritize the organization's needs? And then how do I approach the right capacity, either myself or a partner or another organization, to help achieve that goal? All right. There's a solution for every problem. Every problem there's a solution for. Okay. I hope that was helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay.
I do have a question, unless someone else has a question. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay. Yes. So as a grant writer myself, I usually would charge a flat rate, just like look, I look at what the proposal entails and base it on that. But I've also had clients who try to pay me upfront and then write me in as a consultant in their budget to do ongoing grants management. Is that is that ethical?
Okay. If they've paid you for your services and they want you to be a part of their team, like with graphics design or administrative support, and then they put that in their budget to help them with their staffing capacity, then that is doable, right? Grants typically are not going to pay for that position. That's generally going to be funded from your other streams of income. That's going to come from your donors, those non-designated funds. So you being a part of the team, as it were, like a graphics designer or someone who's doing contract work, then yeah, that is appropriate. But to say, I'm writing this grant, I'm going to pay you, and then I'm going to write you into this grant to get my money back, no, you can't do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I heard you mention earlier, you like don't say impact, right? When you're looking for grants, but kind of, say something else to show who you served. So, are there any other key terminologies or information that organizations should be aware of, not to put into a grant proposal, so that so that you're able to move forward and possibly secure the funding? Or yeah, how should they word it or draft it?
Well, we should know what our goals are, right? Impact comes from our goals. So when I say impact, I'm saying that I've met my goal. I've met my goal by. So an impact message says, I know what my goals are. My goals are to feed 1,000 individuals within this next year. My impact message is, to date, we have fed 800. That's an impact message. And we have fed them. And in addition to feeding them, we've provided resources for job skills. We provided that's the impact, that we now are giving them information. Or impact could be, of the 800 that we fed, we also provided resources and services to where now they are getting the services that they need for mental health. Now they're also getting job skills and placement. That's also a part of the impact. So it just depends on what your goals are. Being able to know what those goals are, to be up to date on those goals, and be able to share it. Okay? So when I say impact, I'm saying that I've achieved what I said I was going to do. And this is where, honestly, Google gets in the way, because we don't think of our own goals. We go and take and cut and paste somebody else's goals. I know nobody likes the truth, but this is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
We've not thought about, what are my goals? I just know I want to do something. But have I thought about when and how can I do it between January to December? That means the first quarter, how many people are we serving?
Mm-hmm.
The second quarter, how many people are we serving? And what does serving look like? That should be a part of the impact conversation. So what are the phrases? What are the phrases? Because everybody wants the shortcut, right? Jen, just tell me the shortcut. Just give me the right? I don't want to think about it. Just give me the answer. The answer is this: to date, we have done. Right? You could say, by the end of the year, this is what we intend to have achieved. Not just my activity, but achieved through our program. This is what the success looks like or will look like. With your support, will you join us?
Hi, good
Why is
afternoon.
this important and relevant now? Right? That should be an impact conversation. This is relevant now because the needs are, or this is the instance of this, or we need to increase or decrease that. So it's an increased message, it's a decreased message, it is a what have we done? Not just we've had events, we've fed, but beyond the feeding, what change has happened? Are you going to be right out there and the same people going to be fed? Am I making sense? Am I
Nope,
being
you're making a lot of sense. So it's articulating what does success look like, um, and what identifying what the success look like for your organization. How do you plan on relaying that message to the funders or to the grant as you're putting the grant out, and then making sure that you're buying investment through the potential funder by saying, with your support, we could reach this point, or this is where we could achieve. Or so I definitely understand. I think a lot of organizations that when uh, we get new organizations wanting to join our co-working community for capacity building or what have you, some of them separate. No, they don't separate grant writing and fundraising, right? So they come into the organization, come into the co-working community, and they say, I want funding, I want grants. And if anything we're learning here through this boot camp is definitely not one and the same. As you mentioned, grants is long term, and it complements ongoing programming, but fundraising should be continuously throughout the duration of your programming life.
It's a diverse process. Let me give you some numbers that you can think about. Grants out of your entire budget represents about 17 to 20%. 17 to 20% of your entire organizational budget is grants. 17 to 20%. Okay. Then you've got about 10% that is going to be events. Okay. You've got about 72 to 75%.
I'm sorry, can you do it again so everybody can write it down? Because I'm grabbing my pen and paper too.
Putting it in the chat as well.
Okay.
So you've got 17 to 20% of your overall budget is grants. And this is what you can do. You can take your entire budget and you can say, now I'm focused on how to approach my funding. This is your strategic plan. Your strategic plan is saying, how do I put my focus to achieve my ultimate end? 17%, 70-20% is grants. All right. It's not 100%. It's not even 50%. Okay. Events is about 10%. Those of you guys who love to be an event planner. Okay. It takes a lot of time and it is not designed to fund your entire organization. All right. Those individuals, which include your monthly donors, your regular donors, your major donors, that takes up about 72 to 75% of your budget. All right. That's where the ongoing non-designated money is coming in on a regular basis. And then if you've got a product or service, right? If you've got something else that you also can generate revenue, you got in kind, though your corporate sponsorships, right? Those things go in there as well. So you're looking at a huge funding pie. And many of us spend 90% of our time focused on an area that's only going to represent 20% of the pie. And it's not easier. Why? Because grants are not, they're not ongoing. They're episodic, right? You got to wait for the RFP to come out. Then you've got to wait for them to review it. Then you've got to wait for them to make the consideration. And then and listen, grants are great, honey. Grants are great. But you cannot run an entire organization on grants. Now that's all we heard about at 3:00 a.m. when the man who stood up there with the green suit with the question marks, and all he said was, everybody can get a grant, everybody can get a grant, everybody can get a grant. And it's a lie from the pit. Because if that were true, then everybody would have a grant. He sold a whole bunch of books. He's not in business anymore because it's not true. What is true is that you can get grant funding. Grants represent close to $4 trillion to nonprofits every single year. $4 trillion. The nonprofit is the third largest employer I want you to hear me now. Behind technology and retail, employer is the nonprofit. What does that mean? That means there's a whole bunch of money out there for nonprofits to do a work that is important. But grants are not designed. Back in the day, y'all, back way back in the day, when everybody and their mama could get a grant, all right? Why did they stop that? Because at that time, there was not close to 4 million nonprofits than there are today. So they had to make the process more competitive. They had to make it more so that the people who were getting the money could be stewards of the money. If you do not have a budget, if you do not have a plan for impact over an organization that does, don't get your feelings hurt that you didn't get the grant. Just put the budget in place and get your impact message. That's it. That's it. But you can't go to the window and say, I want a grant, but I don't have my budget in place. I don't have any goals in place. I can't articulate my impact. I done paid a grant writer to do what I told them to do, and they wrote what I gave them. But you didn't get funding because you didn't have a budget. You didn't get funding because you did not have a plan in place for ongoing funding. I don't know how else to say it, y'all. I'm just one of these persons I'm like the old lady at the church, you know, she says, praise the Lord, but she will smack you in the hand with her fan and say, don't touch that, don't touch that, right? I love you, amen. But I just want you to hear my heart. My heart is, I want you to approach this realistically and strategically.
Okay, we have a hand raised, Natifa Lewis.
Hi, good afternoon. I apologize. If you hear a lot of background noise, I'm driving. But I'm representing a cultural organization, Grenada Cultural Festival Group. And so we are a registered nonprofit. We are a relatively new group, although the festival is not new. We were just a committee running it off of an umbrella organization before, but we've incorporated within the last couple of years. With the pandemic, our main thing is normally an annual festival, and so a lot of our other events, fundraising, etc., go towards supporting and culminating with that. And this year has definitely, impacted how we operate. And as we are looking to get more into redesigning our ways of operation, applying for grants and so forth, it's a little bit difficult because, as I think one of the earlier persons said, a lot of organizations run pretty much as business, even though they're registered nonprofits. We operate like a little bit differently. As I said, we're a cultural group, but for the most part, we were not always like a year-round cultural group. Most of our members are voluntary. We do not have any full-time employees, but we're trying to get into that position. What would be your recommendation in terms of, applying for grants and so forth? I think in your last response, you did speak a bit about, having like that budget in place, having that plan in place, but what would you give to an organization like ours?
I think the first presenter talked about visibility, right? In order for us to get money, where does money come from? Money comes from people. Money comes from institutions. And how do they know who to give to? We've got to be able to be visible. We've got to be able to show and share impact. And so if in order for us to come from an organization that is volunteer-led, I work for the American Red Cross is a volunteer-led organization. Girl Scouts largely is a volunteer-led organizations as well as others. So you having a path and a plan of visibility, with visibility comes awareness. With awareness comes opportunity to educate, inspire, and inform. That's where the money comes from. So I can't go from wanting to grow my organization without knowing where does growth come from, or how do I do the growth? The growth comes with how do people know about what we do? How do they then connect with what we do? That comes from a conversation, y'all. Can we just say conversation? It's not going to come through Facebook. It's not going to come through Google. It's going to come from a conversation to express, to educate, to inspire, to inform those individuals who are from your culture, who understand the need of what you're doing, who see the relevance in what you're doing, who can buy into the passion of what you're doing. That comes from a conversation of how much do you know about our organization? Can I share with you what our impact is and why it is that we're important to do what we're doing now? Can I share with you what's at stake if our organization is not involved? And would you like to be a part of that? Sharing posts is not a conversation. Can I just say that again? Putting up a post is not why people come to your organization. They come because they are connected in some way, either through experience, either through relationship, either through their own interest to what you do. So the more you are visible, the more opportunity that you get people to see, to know, and to be engaged to what you do. That's how you solidify the relationship and grow the relationship. Now, social media is great, y'all, but I'm telling you, people give to people. And people give to what they are interested in giving to, what's important to them. They don't give because of it's important to you. They give because it's important to them. So how do I know what's important to them?
Mm. I just want to, if I could chime in on that or just add to that about people giving to people. Just off my experience, some of our biggest partners through Shown Hearts actually came from first off of collaborations that we've made with different organizations. They introduced us to a partner, a corporate partner, and it came from the relationship that I built with that corporate partner's person, whoever that community given person is. It was never all right, we partnered, you gave us a donation or monies or what have you, and it was just, all right, see you later. I'll reach out to you next year when this event comes back. It was always, all right, so thank you for the donation. This is what we've done. This is what we do. We'd love to have further conversations with you to see how can we grow partnerships with you, which correlated to some of our largest, monies that we receive. And I make that point because these are groups that see us post all the time on social media. They see us post on, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook because of Denise. Like they see us post all the time. However, the reason why they're giving now is because I actually took the time out to have that conversation and have that visibility, that one-on-one with them so that they could give to me. So just to your point, again, people give to people. So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and I know that we're overwhelmed. We're like, oh my God, Jen, I've got 1,000 things I'm doing. I'm doing this. I got board. I got staff. I got program. I got my life. I got my job. I got da 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 da. I say to leaders, if you spend 45 minutes a day, just 45 minutes a day, all right? And it doesn't even have to be 45 minutes at one time. If you spend 15 minutes going through a list of businesses, of individuals that you want to know, could know, and send them an email. Then spend another 15 minutes making phone calls to follow up and to answer questions or to connect with people that you might have met at a meeting or that you would like to meet and schedule a meeting for, okay? And then spend that last 15 minutes writing emails or posting and speaking to the people that would be a part of you. You've got to do that. Osmosis is not going to bring funding or relationships. And in order for people to be able to become your evangelists, to speak well of you, they've got to know about you. And then they got to like you and trust you with their cash. Can we just get to the bottom of that? Nobody's giving their money to anybody they don't trust. All right? You're not going to do it. If I were to say to you, hey, y'all come and go, and I'm a humming all day long, and then I say, I promise I can do some great things. What are you going to do? You're going to research me. That's what your donors are going to do to you. They're going to go to your website. They're going to go to your social media pages. They're going to know before they feel like giving you money. So you've got to be consistent. You've got to be visible. You've got to be able to share and show what you do is of interest to them. It's amazing to me how we want to be a community-based organization, but we don't think about the community. putting ourselves in the donor's shoes. That's how you become successful in raising money. Is that you're thinking more about how can I help you? How can your interests be met by being a part of our organization? We don't come with a hand out. We come with, no, I need. We come with, I give. How can our organization help yours to achieve success? What is it that you're interested in that we can help ensure that it's being met? How can we make this a great experience for you? Am I making sense?
Yes, you definitely are.
Oh God, I'm thankful for that. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? I just feel like hopefully this was helpful.
Okay, this is great. We are still ahead of time, so we're gonna move right along. Christina, the other Chris.
Wait, I'm sorry, Denise. I think Shinzi had a quick question.
We do?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you, David. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Man, this is I'm like I'm keeping my camera on so that I can relax. Because if I turn it off, I'm gonna have to stand up and I'm gonna be shouting and dancing and making all kinds of noise. Man, this is good. This is so good. I echo in Issa's sentiments and being super grateful to Showing Hearts and for everyone that has spoken today. Phenomenal. So now my question is with regard to grants. They are, as I understand it, they are, once you get a grant, usually they're specific towards something. So if I'm getting a grant to purchase bottles, then all I can do with this grant is purchase bottles, and that's it. So is there a misconception, or is there a misconception there, or have things changed? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Okay, so tell me what your program is. I'll give you a real example. Tell me what your program focuses.
Okay, so ADA Youth basically is a nonprofit organization that works with youth and young adults between the ages of 13 to 25. And we exist to answer the question, how do we raise tomorrow's leaders today? And so we do that by offering programming. We do mental health workshops. Right now we're doing sewing. We're back to doing the sewing programs and helping young people understand and know how to sew, how to create their designs and clothing. Mental health, that, and then we also do financial literacy training. This summer, we were able to help, I think it was over 60 youth find jobs and employment through connections with Showing Hearts and other community organizations and business owners. So we run the gamut in just basically providing a service to young people within our communities, especially our Black and Brown communities, exposing them to opportunities for them to grow and succeed.
Okay, so then let's go back to the analogy of the bottles, okay? Yes. So you've got a program and you now are approaching funders who are interested in leadership development. That's one bottle cabinet, okay? You then could also approach funders who are interested in financial literacy. That's a whole different bottle cabinet. You then can approach funders who are interested in minority communities, young people who are at risk. That's a whole different bottle cabinet situation, right? You could also speak to people who are funders who are interested in collaborations, right? That's a whole different bottle category. So now you've got, in that alone, you've got mental health, right? And speaking to those funders who are interested in funding mental health. That's a whole nother bottle cabinet. So you can have those various different topics that impact or position your organization to achieve its mission by going to what? Those funders who are interested in those types of bottles, right? So those who are interested in mental health, then you talk about how mental health is critical and important and how you achieve impact through the services provided through mental health. Then you start talking about the needs of the young people who are Black and Brown and minority, and by supporting these organizations with our life skills, with our financial literacy, what it will enable this community to do. That's a whole different conversation, All right. Then you're talking about cooperation and collaboration and working with partnerships within our community, how we're able to now have greater impact and increase capacity of service by being in cooperation. So those funders who are interested in cooperation or collaboration, they want to fund that. Am I making sense? So you've got a whole bridge and a way of approaching the funding process. But what I said was you've got to be able to articulate how each of these areas impact the community that you serve. One program, Lord have mercy, I feel a sermon coming, all right? One spirit, many members, all right? So you got one program that has several different areas to complete its one goal. So you talk about how the spirit of financial literacy, honey, is going to impact and grow the body. Then you talk over here about the gift of financial literacy, how that is going to improve the body. I felt that thing. I felt it. I swear I felt it. All right.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you, thank you,
All
thank
right.
you.
So you're just thinking broadly and thinking strategically. Not all funders fund all things, but you can get a lot of funding if you know all the ways that your organization can approach a funder based upon their interest. Though their interest, okay? So there's lots of bottles. You just pick the right bottle cabinet and those funders will be interested in those types of bottles.
Jeez, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right.
Well, that was awesome. Jeez. So we're definitely going to need that PowerPoint. I got a couple of texts. So we're going to want to be able to review that in our time. Thank you so much. I may be in touch myself. Anyway, so we are on to our last presenter, and time has been flying by, and I appreciate everybody.
Can
Are
I
you
add
saying
one
something?
thing?
Sure.
Yeah. Can I say one thing? I have a grants alert that I send out to people who say, Jen, I want, I do grant research all day long. So if you guys would like to get on my email and to get those grant alerts, then I'm putting my email in the chat, and all you got to do is say, Jen, I want those grant alerts. And you can email me and I'll add you to the list. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
That is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're on to Chris, Miss Chris. And we're on fundraising campaigns. So whenever you're ready. And you can preach too. You can preach too. We've been getting some good word today.
I'm sorry, I think I was muted there for a second. But I'll say I am not a preacher, so we can just we can manage our expectations in that regard. However, I will say that I have been so incredibly blessed by this incredibly well-informed, knowledgeable, just all-star group of experts. Each of you have been so phenomenal. I almost feel like y'all don't even really need me to do this, but I'm going to underscore a lot of what we've heard already and just kind of wrap a tying bow. That last presentation on grant funding, my goodness, I work for a community foundation that makes grants, that has made $2 billion in grants since its foundation. And I am so awed at how much I just learned in that last hour. So thank you, Jen, for sharing. And thank you to Fred and Chris, who have already gone and kind of set the stage for me to share. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you again, Denise and Showing Hearts for having me. I've been away from New York City for quite a while, but so it feels good to really be back in the community with you all, even virtually, to talk about something that is so near and dear to me. And so I just want to start out by stating the obvious, right? The fact that there is a whole 4-hour-long boot camp on fundraising means that it is not easy, right? It is a skill, it is a learned behavior that you really have to hone in on to do it and to do it well. And so I just want to acknowledge that fact. I also want to acknowledge the fact that fundraising in the era and the season that we're in right now is also difficult, right? So there is like the strategy and the technicality around developing your asks. There's the vulnerability that it takes to make an ask, when there's so much economic uncertainty. But I think what we're seeing right now, what I've seen in my experience, is that while there are all these elements that make fundraising hard, it's also incredibly fulfilling as a fundraiser to do, because we're seeing the community come together and rally behind causes and rally around where they live and what they do in ways that we haven't seen before because of the intensity of what's happening in our world right now. So it's a hard time for fundraisers, but it's also a really good time. And so today I just want to share a little bit about fundraising and with specifics to campaigning, a little bit different from the individual ongoing fundraising that Chris talked about, and obviously very different from the grant funding that Jen talked about. The fundraising campaign world is really thinking through those specialized blitzes that you do that are either based upon a season or a specific fundraising that you're doing for a special program, or other really concentrated efforts that you're doing to really engage your audience to give and support your cause. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here today. And so in that discussion, when we're talking about the art and science and fundraising campaigns, we're going to break it down into 4 or 5 rather topic areas. And the first one is the tactic, technique, and the timing. We're going to talk a little bit about telling the story. We're going to talk a little bit about tapping the right technology. And lastly, we're going to talk about taking care of our donors. And in addition to being a nonprofit marketer, I'm a writer, so I do like alliteration. I'll just share a little bit more about how I got here. I introduced myself earlier on, but I have been a marketer in the nonprofit sector for about 13 years. And currently in my role here in Dallas, I am leading the marketing strategy for North Texas Giving Day, which is the largest one-day fundraising campaign event in the country. I am a passionate storyteller and community connector. And as I said, I'm not a preacher, but I do know that I am called to connect people to the causes that they care about so that they can amplify their impact and make meaningful change in their communities. And so a lot of what I share today will be grounded in what I do every day, which is work on a fundraising campaign year round. And so I wanted to give a little bit of context as we use North Texas Giving Day as a case study, so to speak. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what it is, because I'm sure that most of you are in New York, that you're not familiar with it. But North Texas Giving Day is, like I said, the largest one-day fundraising event in the country. It's an 18-hour event that happens once a year, each September. And it really is an opportunity or an online event that drives donors to connect with nonprofits and serves as a one-stop shop where givers can give as part of a region-wide movement. North Texas Giving Day, as the platform or the program, we equip more than 3,300 nonprofits annually, and we provide them training, guidance, strategic resources, and really help them recruit, engage, and cultivate new and returning donors, and also build their organization's brand. North Texas Giving Day is one of the programs of Communities Foundations of Texas, which, as I stated a little earlier, is a grant-making institution here in Dallas. And the photo that you see here was last year's Giving Day, where we raised $50 million. And this was a moment of celebration of that record. And so again, just to give a little bit more context to the scale and growth of Giving Day, you'll see here that in 2009, in its first year, we raised $4 million. And really the goal when we developed North Texas Giving Day was to really provide an opportunity for our donors to find their nonprofits of choice. The platform is such that you can go online and search northtexasgivingday.org. And if you care about, hunger or, education or the arts, you can filter through various searches just to find organizations in the area that's doing that work. And so that's how it started back in 2009. But what's happened over the last 12 years is that it's picked up such steam and become such a movement that people have adopted it here locally as a thing that they do every September, much in like people give at year end, or they celebrate Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving. North Texas Giving Day here in Texas has become something that the region has adopted, so much so that this September, just a few months ago, we broke yet another record by raising $58.8 million by way of 106,000 donors. And so just so incredibly awed to see the generosity of this region. And so before I begin talking about the technicalities of fundraising in terms of campaigns, I wanted to share this quote that I found recently, and it really spoke to me. And it says, "Fundraising is the gentle art," and I might even add in science, "of teaching the joy of giving." And so that quote really resonated with me, because I'd say that fundraising is an art and science, but the real heart of fundraising is this. As a fundraiser, you are informing, you are teaching, and you are inspiring people to connect with the spirit of generosity. On its own, when you think about what it means to give to an organization, it isn't inherently logical, right? To give your money to an organization when you're not getting a physical or tangible good or product in exchange. And so the act of fundraising itself really is an act that appeals to a donor's desire to do something right and to do something good. And so as you're thinking about, making those asks and developing campaigns, keep that in the forefront of your mind as you think about how you want to approach your donors. And so to get into the meat of how to approach campaigning for fundraising, I just wanted to share, the tactic and the technique and the timelining that it takes to formulate and develop a successful campaign. Successful campaigns are successful because they're planned for, right? Identifying the way you will deploy your campaign helps to ensure that you and your team build a multi-channel, audience-responsive, and effective approach to engaging your audience in ways that produce results. And so when I think about the tactics and the techniques and the timeline of planning your fundraising campaign, the first step that I'll always speak to is naming what your goals are. So implied in fundraising, right, we know that you want to raise money. That goes without saying. But what else, right? Fundraising is not the only thing. We heard someone talk earlier about visibility. That's another aspect of planning a fundraising campaign. Are there other pipelines to fundraising that are important as you're building out a strategy for creating a fundraising campaign? Is it just a dollar amount? It shouldn't be. What other key performance indicators will measure the effectiveness of your campaign? Do you want to recruit new donors? Do you want to add new names to your database? Do you want to go and re-engage and reactivate donors who might have given 2 or 3 or 4 years before but didn't come back last year? There are other ways to really measure the way and the effectiveness of a campaign. And so when you're thinking through developing a blitz or a campaign, you want to think through and write down what those goals are. The second step that you want to consider when you're planning is to gather your tools. And so when you define your goals and you assess what your needs are, you'll need to learn all the different things that you'll need to actually deploy the campaign based on those goals, right? So if you are doing a mailer or a direct mail piece, or you're doing a traditional letter, you're going to have to account for the tools of paper and postage and all of the elements that will make that mailed campaign a success. If you're thinking through a virtual campaign or a drip campaign, we call them sometimes, you're going to think about needing to learn the email software tools to make that email campaign work. So whatever your approach is for your fundraising campaign, you're definitely going to have to assess if you already have in-house what you need to make that campaign successful. And if you don't, how can you acquire the resources to do it? The last step in planning for your campaign is to manage the project, and I might add manage the project well. This one is pretty granular and it's a little bit administrative, but it's super important when you think about how you overarching create what your plan is going to look like. And so it looks like a project task list, right? So what are all the various steps that you're going to need to take to deploy your campaign? Who's responsible for those various tasks? What is the timeline that those tasks need to be completed in? All of those elements are super important, not just for writing it down and goal setting, but really for the purpose of replicating that campaign year after year. So managing your project, whether you do it in a basic Excel spreadsheet or you use one of those digital tools that are created for project planning like a Asana or a Bootcamp, some of those different tools that are available online, it's really important that you create a project management system so that you're not just throwing things at a wall kind of haphazardly hoping that they stick. And so when I think about the tactics, the techniques, and the timeline, I ask you to consider planning with these steps involved. The next thing that I think is super important to any fundraising campaign is telling the story. Effective storytelling for fundraising really requires that individuals and organizations create an emotional connection to their audiences by providing real scenarios that demonstrate an authentic need and that offers opportunities for donors to make a real impact. We just heard Jen say that people give to people, and I could not agree with her more. And the way that people will give is, like she said, by having a conversation and by learning the genesis of why you do what you do and the story behind what makes your cause effective and necessary. And so when you think about telling a story, the elements that I advise nonprofits and fundraisers to consider is that a story, just like any fiction novel that you read or any movie that you watch, it has to have some key components, right? And so it needs to have a connection point. There needs to be a character or characters. There should also be a conflict, right? And also there should be a resolution and a call to action. And so I thought about what Chris shared about why she started ICU, and she demonstrated when she shared what exactly telling that story would look like. She said that she's been wearing glasses since she was 3 years old. So that was the connection point. She talked about the conflict in that, glasses can be super expensive, especially for those who are uninsured or don't have access to traditional healthcare. And then she talked about what role donors could play in helping to bridge that gap and helping to address that conflict. And so in her telling her story behind ICU, you got to learn why this nonprofit organization was so necessary and so effective. And so when you're thinking about developing a campaign, think about the story that you want to tell about your organization and the ways that you want to tell that story. And so that moves me into the next point, in that your story needs to be creatively presented. As she also said, Chris, we are all competing for time and attention between our phones and social media and the news. Stories really need to stand out. So think about the ways that you're going to use both social media, traditional media, and mail to tell the story in a way that is impactful at first glance. And so think about the ways that you are going to utilize those social media posts. Though it doesn't stand in the place of a conversation, think about the way that you can use images and art to really tell that story and to tell it creatively. And lastly, when you're thinking about telling your story, it really needs to be inspiringly hopeful. Like I said before, at the end of it all, potential donors want to know that their financial support of your organization and your work means that there's a solution ahead. And so even if the cause that you're raising money for is a heavy one or a hard one, donors really want to know that if I give this $50 gift or $100 gift, or if I come on board to be a monthly donor, that there is some opportunity to make things better. So inspire your donors as you're telling your story. I wanted to share real quick. I wanted to leave Texas and come back to New York to look at this story that many of us learned and read about in September of this year. And it was such a great example of the way that storytelling can take one scenario and really revolutionize the way that people come together to support a cause that they come to care about. And so if any of you follow the social media account Humans of New York, back in September, we learned the story of this woman named Stephanie, who is now in her 70s, but was a former burlesque performer on the scene many years ago. And in a series of 32 Instagram posts, we learned this woman's very salacious, very crazy, very made for TV story about the way that she navigated her life as a New York City stripper. And over the course of 32 posts, I don't remember what the timeline was, I think it might've been a week to 10 days that we learned the story, people rallied together from across the world to raise $3 million for this woman, Stephanie, who's now at a position where her health is failing and she's facing some other challenges. But Humans of New York utilized the thing that we're all on. They utilized Instagram and Facebook to tell the story of this woman. And in result, what we saw was $3 million raised to support this woman who was in need. And so when you think about the way stories need to be told, you don't need to do something incredibly fantastic or it's something that is, going to stretch your budget, you can utilize the resources that are in your hand, but being sure to elaborate on the characters in the story, the conflicts, the resolutions, and the need. And so that's what we saw with this story. And I thought it was just really incredible the way that people rallied behind who this woman is and what she needed. Moving on, as you're considering your fundraising campaign, it's really, really, really important that you tap the right technology. One of the things that we have learned just in the industry of fundraising and specifically fundraising online is that some of the things that we utilize, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, they have really changed the game in terms of consumer behavior. Consumers, who are ultimately our donors, they expect instant, highly curated, very relevant content, and they expect it pretty quickly. And so it's important that those same tenets really exist in the way that you fundraise and the way that you utilize online tools to actually get people to give. And so when we think about utilizing technology, I really encourage people to utilize the tools that help them reach more donors more efficiently. And so when we think about, social tools as the primary source of communication, or, using things like Zoom to convene your donors virtually, it's really important that you think about how you can be efficient in terms of your reach. And so I often encourage people to utilize the internet to find, if you don't have budget to buy software tools, utilize the internet to find tools that are free that will allow you to reach more donors a little bit faster and to communicate with them a little bit more frequently than you would if you were making phone calls or doing home visits or, doing mailed letters. Think about the ways that you might be able to reach more people a little faster. The other thing in terms of technology is that donors want to give and they want to support you, but they don't want to do a whole lot of steps to get there, especially when you're thinking about the new age of donors who are coming into their wealth. We are able to do everything with the click of a few buttons on our phone. And so I encourage fundraisers, especially around campaigns, to utilize donation platforms that make giving easy. With North Texas Giving Day, we heard from 31% of those 100,000 donors that one of their key motivators for giving on Giving Day was the fact that it was just so easy. And so when you're thinking through what your various tools will be, whether you're utilizing your own website or if you're utilizing PayPal or some other digital, virtual financial tool, it's really important that it is easily navigable, that it's very clear how donors can engage your tool, and just makes it easy for them to not have to click out of an email to go to another place, but makes it really seamless for them to make their transaction. So thinking about that platform in that way is super important. And lastly, in terms of technology, it's important that as a fundraiser, that you're utilizing and engaging a tool to help you track donor data. We talked a little bit and we heard a lot actually, about all the steps that it takes to get these donors, right? To find them, to tell them the story, to engage them around your cause or mission. Once you do all that work, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of them in a system that you can refer back to as you want to ask them again. And so investing in, a tool that allows you to keep donor data updated and refreshed is super important. Having a tool, whether it's cloud-based software or a digital project organizer, is crucial for retaining the donors that you do bring on to support your work. Being able to analyze and assess their behavior over time is key to helping them grow and to become ambassadors and more frequent donors to your work and to your organization. And so be sure to invest, whether it's the time and the elbow grease that it takes to build an Excel file or invest in a software tool. That investment is going to be key for retaining the donors that are introduced to your organization by way of your fundraising campaign. The next thing that I think is super important is taking care of your donors. And we heard quite a bit about this from Chris as she talked about donor cultivation or donor relations and donor stewardship. But when you're thinking about, a campaign that you put special energy into, that you really get a lot of visibility and buzz around, it's super important that your donors, feel really connected to not only your organization, but to what their gift made to your organization actually did. And so, when I think about the donors who give on North Texas Giving Day, some of those donors, have never given before. Some of them have never heard of some of the organizations that they support, but because it is such a widespread movement that happens every September, people just find themselves on the website and they're just making gifts. And so I always tell our nonprofits that it is imperative that you thank your donors. And for me, I say to do it immediately. I think sometimes you want to build a plan that would have you follow up more formally, perhaps with a letter or a call later on. But I think when donors are making those emotional decisions to give to your organization, it's key to get them in that moment and thank them for the gift that they made. And so one of the things that comes to mind from North Texas Giving Day is, there was a nonprofit who was kind of sitting and watching the donations come in all day and all night long. And she and her team of volunteers, every time a gift came in, they picked up the phone and called that donor right there in the moment. And there was one organization I remember who said that, when she made that call to a new donor who had never given to her organization before, the donor was so overwhelmed that he said, you know what, not only am I going to, give the gift I already gave, but I'm going to come back and give again, because the fact that you have acknowledged me and what I did and told me the impact that I'm making, it really, just left a really great impression. And so I think it's really important that you prioritize thanking your donors and doing it sooner than later. The other thing that I think is super important is to pay attention to building the donor pipeline. I know that, when we talk about donor relationships and donor cultivation, we think about what you need to do once the gift is made. But I think, we would do ourselves a disservice if we don't think about the donors who are kind of forming, as they get to know us, right? And so sometimes those donors in progress, I like to call them, look like volunteers. They may be people who just come to your event, or, they sign up with their families to help you pass out meals or whatever it is that your organization does. But what you can do in those instances is really develop a pipeline where that person, comes to you for what they think is a one-time thing, a one-time volunteer opportunity. But over time, they become invested in the story of your organization. They become invested in the people of your organization. And so what you do is you build a pipeline whereby they become really invested. And long before you know it, they'll become donors and ambassadors. And I can use myself, for example. When I moved to Dallas, when I first engaged North Texas Giving Day, there was a woman who I met who was raising money for a small nonprofit that serves the southern sector of Dallas, which is a marginalized neighborhood. But I met her and she just told me a little bit about what she was doing in South Dallas. She was hosting a prayer walk one day and she said, would you come and just pray with some of the women in the community? And so I came, which for what I thought was like a one-time thing. But what happened was she and I developed a friendship. And that friendship ultimately led to she and I having a weekly prayer call. And that weekly prayer call led to her asking me to serve on her board, which ultimately means that now not only am I volunteering for that organization at a high level, but I'm also financially contributing every month. And so it happened by way of me doing what I thought was a one-time thing, but ultimately has come to become a super high level involvement and commitment, not just financially, but in terms of my time as well. So I would encourage people not to deprioritize the people who haven't given yet, but see them as potential people who will ultimately get there. And lastly, when you think about taking care of your donors, this has been said already, but really it's about building a relationship. It's really important that you move the donor relationship from purely transactional to personal. Whether a donor gives $5 or $5,000, it's important to not assume that your donor just knows what you do and they know the nuance of your organization and they know all of the various things that inform the mission that you are working to solve for. And so I would say that it's imperative to make some concerted efforts to get to know the donors beyond their gift, right? So making those calls, as Chris said, and I think Jen said as well, making those calls, learning a little bit about their personal stories. And if there isn't a direct tie to why they're supporting your work, learning what motivated them and what inspired them. And so I think that it's worth the time that it takes to do that relationship development so that those donors feel invested in just as much as they've invested in you. The donor and fundraiser relationship shouldn't be one-sided. It isn't just them giving to you, but it really is them looking to you to help them learn more about the work that you do, both locally where you do it, but even beyond. If it's an issue around, you have a food pantry, they might be looking to you to inform them more about hunger and what it means in community. And so it's really important to take that relationship seriously, see them all as, investors in your work, and to do that in a way that is meaningful and authentic and genuine. And so that taking care of the donor piece is huge. And I might posit that it's probably one of the biggest steps that fundraisers and fundraising campaigners can make to ensuring that their campaigns year after year continue to be successful. That's really it. I feel like I said, a lot of what I had to share today was already discussed by some of my co-panelists, but I wanted to underscore some of those items by kind of concentrating them in terms of fundraising campaigns, which are, I won't lie to you, they're a lot of work, but the results when they're done well are really just beyond. We've seen with North Texas Giving Day, organizations start with us back in 2009, raising super small amounts, but progressively as the years have gone on and they've gotten more sophisticated, they've taken more time to plan and to execute on those plans. We've seen some of those organizations raise the majority of their budget using North Texas Giving Day as a special tool and fundraising campaign. So that is all that I wanted to share. And thanks again for your time. If you want to follow up, if you want to learn more about the way that campaigning works on a large scale like North Texas Giving Day, I'm always willing to help and to answer any questions. And so you can contact me via the outlets that I've provided here. And I just wish you all the best in your work. Thank you again, Showing Hearts and Denise and David.
I have a question. In terms of project management, is there a software? Do you use calendars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a ton of project management tools. I will say the best ones are very expensive. So I named Asana, I named Basecamp. There's one called Teamwork. Those are ones that are a little bit more intuitive. So they kind of help you assign tasks and they have notifications and they have all those bells and whistles that make, project management very sexy these days. But really, if you want to get nitty gritty with it, you can use the Google Drive and create a system where you list out all of the various tasks of a project and assign them to yourself, your volunteers, your staff. And really what it does is, like I said, it not only helps to organize what you're doing for a specific campaign, but it helps to make your next year's campaign easily replicated. That's one of the biggest time expenditures that some people make. They spend a whole lot of time doing the planning when really they can just consult the plan that they utilized before, making the appropriate edits based on what worked and what didn't. But truly the project task list is key to making sure that year after year, those campaigns get implemented quickly.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. And the presentation, I know you mentioned a given tool, given app. I missed the name of it. Was it Donafly? What did you mention?
Did I say a donor app?
You said it's integrated right into the emails, and donors could just make donations right then and there rather than having to, be redirected.
Right, off the page.
I don't think I named one specifically.
Oh, okay.
I was just saying that whatever you're using, it should be such that they can make their donations directly from whatever you're sending them. So if it's an email, embedding it in an email, or or if it's an app, making sure that your app is mobile responsive, your website is mobile responsive, so that people don't have to make too many steps.
Okay. I know you mentioned the importance of having the data and knowing your donors and your partners and et cetera. Do you recommend because I know somebody asked us this in the co-working group recently, do you recommend a good CRM platform, a customer relationship management platform, or?
Yeah. So I really struggle with recommending them to small nonprofits because they're so expensive. But it really depends on the level of involvement that you're looking. Like a lot of these CRMs will try to sell you the world, right? Because that's how they make their money. But I think it's first taking stock of what you actually need. If you don't need the kind of CRM that's going to go back and research the wealth history of your biggest donor. Like, don't buy a tool or a platform that's going to offer you that. I think a basic CRM can look like, honestly, an Excel spreadsheet until you get to the point where your volume necessitates that you invest in something that has all of those special features. So I would say to start small and to automate tools that are already available to you. So using Excel, using Google Drive, using things that are on the cloud that already work. And then when you're ready to make that investment, I think Neon offers like a crazy product. Salesforce can work for, even nonprofits, even though it's more business directed. Those are two that I think are really efficient at what they do. But truly, I urge people to make sure that they need all of those bells and whistles before they make that investment into those CRM tools.
Thank you.
So with a campaign like the North Texas Giving Day, how far in advance are you planning? Do you start planning the day after?
Yeah. So like I said, September, every third Thursday is when North Texas Giving Day happens. And so I have a team of 8 and we work on this year round. So literally as soon as Giving Day is over, our immediate work is to get people their checks, because what happens is all the money is funneled through the North Texas Giving Day platform. All the money comes through our foundation. And then our responsibility is to disseminate those funds, within a few weeks. After that, we start doing strategic planning for what the Giving Day for the next year is going to be. So even right now, December of 2020, Giving Day happened 4 months ago. We're now in the strategic planning process to ensure that we have all of the tools that makes giving easier for donors, and that we encourage and equip our nonprofits with what they need to make their campaign successful. The interesting thing about my role is that I'm kind of marketing to 2 different audiences. I'm marketing to the donors who will give and support nonprofits, but I'm also marketing to the nonprofits to get them to participate so that they will encourage donors to give. So it's kind of a 2-pronged thing, but I work on this year round. And so when I talked about the timelining of it, I really think that if you are planning special blitzes, so Giving Tuesday, if that's something that you're doing, or a special capital campaign, or I don't know, any special project that you're looking to fund via individual donors in a specialized way, you really need to start no less than 6 months out.
I think what's so important about what Chris is sharing with us is, just like Jen said, there's 17 to 20% that comes from grants, and 10% is from, what was the other one, guys? What in kind? I don't know. But the third is this
10% is grants. 17 to 20% overall budget is grants. 10% is events.
Events. Okay, events. See, I forgot about events because we don't make any money off of them. But anyway,
but to your point, overwhelmingly so, the individual donors are the largest part of the fundraising pie. And with the individual donors, I think sometimes we think like, oh, if you're raising, thousands of dollars, even with us, for one event to raise $58 million, people always think that the gifts are huge.
No.
95% of the donations that came through on North Texas Giving Day 2020 were under $100. It's kind of like that Obama campaign effect. Like it's the mass of small gifts that really matters. And so that's why the visibility, the storytelling, the technology, the social media, all of that is super important when you're trying to design a campaign, because all of those elements speak to the everyday donor like me. I can't give you a $50,000 gift, but I can, do some small $25 gifts to 10 organizations. And so it's really important that you kind of feed the campaign that way, thinking about the low level donors.
Right. Excellent.
That's crucial. Thank you for that.
And what would you say is the hardest part about what you do?
I think with North Texas Giving Day specifically as a campaign, and I'm not saying that this is going to exist for all campaigns, I think while it's become an anticipated year-round event, sometimes it's like, okay, it's the same thing, right? Like every year these nonprofits participate, and every year we give to who we care about, or we give to, if there's a new cause or something that happens that, would require me to give or stretch my budget a little further, I'll just give to them. But so I think it's really trying to innovate around what the donor experience can be like. And so for me, I'll just give an example of something that we innovated this year, you know, with the killings of Black Americans that we saw this year and kind of the racial unrest that was happening. We wanted to be responsive, even as a fundraising campaign. We said to ourselves, like, what can we do to make it such that we show our relevance with what's happening in the culture? And so what we did was, when you go on North Texas Giving Day, you could search by organizations led by people of color. Because what we wanted to say was, you know, we aren't an organization that can immediately address the racial and civil unrest in ways that, you know, are frontline facing. But what we can do is prioritize Black leaders. We can prioritize Hispanic leaders. And so we made it a search filter that people could go on and search for those leaders and give to the organizations that were led by them. So it's really just thinking about being innovative according to what's happening in the culture, what's happening in the industry, and what's happening just in terms of donor behavior.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Any questions?
Yes. Man, okay. I don't know if y'all ever been sitting in the crowd and you sat next to somebody and when they get up, you're watching them walk up, and then when they blow you away, you're like, oh, come on, man. That's how I'm feeling right now. Oh, man. But so my question is, phenomenal presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
It sounds a little bit overwhelming. It sounds like something that you have to continuously keep knocking at. And I mean, that's important, right? Because this is how you're going to get the funds to do your work. So my question is, how do you keep up when you have so many, like I said, if you have so many donors, but you have a small organization?
Yeah.
Because I like the components, right? But sometimes.
That's a great question. That's a great question. So we get that question a lot because the nonprofits that participate in Giving Day, you have super small dog rescues where it's like a husband and a wife. And then you have like the big food banks that are run like corporations. And so those volunteer organizations will say, I could never compete with what the food bank does. But what we tell them when we think about goal setting is that you don't have to try to boil the ocean, right? Pick one goal. Right? If your goal is to increase your donor base by 5 donors, let that be where you pour all of your energy. If your goal is to get more engagement or new followers on your social media, let that be what you pour all of your energy and resource into. And so I think that for organizations that are that have small staffs and they don't have the capacity to do these huge, like glitzy, fancy, sparkly campaigns, really pick one goal and cultivate all the things needed around building that donor pipeline. That's why I tell nonprofits all the time, it isn't always just about seeing number go up on the leaderboard every year. It really is thinking about the impact you're making and the way that you are structuring other people to know your brand and to recognize you in the marketplace. Because what that will do is year after year, it gives you more opportunity and more leverage to be more seen so you can raise more money. So it's really a long play, right? It isn't like, you just do it and you're going to raise your entire budget. Special campaigns, obviously, as we stated, are not ever really going to raise your entire budget. It's a combination of the perfect mix. But I do think that it's really important that you structure your goal setting around what is feasible and attainable for you with the resources you have right now.
Thank you. And the second question is, we were talking to a friend of ours who was talking to us about donors, and when we talk to potential donors, does a person's appearance play a part in a person giving to your cause? Like so the person was telling us, if you look like you need money, physical, right? If you look like you need money, then they might not give it to you because the concern might be that you're going to use the funds for yourself or some type of malfeasance. So have you heard that? Is that something that comes up?
I have heard and seen kind of smaller nonprofits. Maybe their leaders are a little bit more scruffy. Maybe they're younger. Some of them have tried to posture themselves to look more like they will appeal to like the highfalutin donor. And while I understand, it's kind of like the same culture that's created around, well, you need to dress professionally to get the job you want. But I actually am a little counter that right now. I think you need to be authentic to whoever you are and the culture that your organization represents, right? So if you in the hood and you serving kids in the hood, please don't come to me with a 3-piece suit on, because that's not what you're doing every day. what you're doing every day is like getting in the sandbox. You're ruffling with these boys and these girls who need a little bit of guidance. You're really in the mission and in the work that you're doing. So I would say that what you need to look like is what you're actually doing. Period.
Can I add to that, which I was so inspired by, Christina? That was such a wise response. The other part of that is if you are working in a place where you're inviting professionals to come be a part, invite them to come in a casual setting to your organization. If you're feeding, invite them to come feed with you, right? If you are serving, that's a way to engage them beyond you, but to connect with who they, through you, are serving. So then the appearance does make sense. Then the appearance of hard work does make a difference, and it's visual for them, right? People don't give because it's a mental thing. It's an emotional thing. People give emotionally. And so you being able to bring them to a place where they could see you at work. Don't invite them to give a backpack. Ask them to come and help you hand out those backpacks, right? Or to leave a note in those backpacks. That then makes the connection beyond the appearance. It's now about the cause. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's so important. And I just wanted to add that. I don't mean to.
Can I say something to that? Because Christina, that was such a great answer. Even dealing with the genuineness, it's gonna bleed out in your speech, and it's gonna bleed out in your aura. You know, you gotta convince the donor, and what Miss Karen was saying, inviting them to be a part deals with engagement. And so right there, that engagement and connection, it almost makes the person say, hey, I got.
Oh, we lost you.
Now,
you're breaking up, Chris.
How about now? Sorry, I was saying inviting them to be a part deals with that engagement piece that you talked about. So now you're engaging and they're a part of it. So now that they've been there physically, I got to give you money. It's like, I just got to be a part of this. So excellent.
And not only do I want to give you money, but I want to tell my friends to come and experience this life-changing thing that I just did too. And so what you've done is you created like an ambassador of sorts who helps to widen the network of people who know about you. So it really is getting people to like really invest, not just financially, but just in their person, right? And the experience that you create by doing your work and doing your work well.
Amazing. I agree.
Thank you.
I did get a request. I won't say who it's from, but we would like everyone to turn on their mics for a second so we can get screenshots of our participants. And if you can't, because I understand I had to put my hair on for this. If your hair isn't on, you're excused. Yeah, this was great. I'm actually glad that I agreed to moderate because I normally bail. But thank you all. I did want to ask something. I've done my share of grant writing, and I worked for a client at one point, and this is to all of the presenters. And I'm big on writing around and using language that talks about this is achievable. Like we never want a donor to feel like it's a hopeless cause, because at that point they're like throwing away their money. And my client insisted on me using victim language, and she said she got her money because of white guilt. And she played on that. How do you guys feel about creating a narrative that isn't as empowering, but using that to pursue money? Even if it is effective,
I don't like it, but I think when something happens, like right when you had the George Floyd incident or something like that, you don't have to necessarily capitalize on it, but you use the fact. I think there's an old quote: "Never waste a crisis." And you use it at that moment to remind people of your main vision, your main goal, but also tie in and say, okay, you know, we're trying to avoid these situations, but don't make that your main narrative for doing it. Otherwise it becomes tacky.
Yeah.
And while it might be effective, I think somebody just said it's, even if it's effective, it's not sustainable, because it's kind of like that, just like one hitter quitter. Like people might respond in that moment, but it's not going to become a deep relationship. It's going to be like, I did it in that moment because I felt bad, because they drew out the story, because they showed the kids with the, protruding bellies and the hunger, and it was a sad moment. Like, it's not going to sustain a long lasting relationship. And when you think about like the cost analysis of that, is it better to have one $5,000 donation or, years of $1,000 gifts? You know what I'm saying? So I think, you have to kind of measure the efficacy of that moment or the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. Because at that point, that leaves no room for cultivating the relationship, and it just stops. Honestly, it would limit how far it's going to go. You want donors that are going to return because they believe in what you're doing. I don't want you to pacify me with the money. That's cute, but we're trying to make a change that will last for generations, and it's legendary. And I think that kind of just not, like she said, it's not going to be sustainable.
So there are what's called faces of philanthropy, right? And there are different reasons why people give. And there are people who give out of guilt because they feel like they've got so much and they do feel guilty. But then there are those who give because it's very analytical and it makes sense. There are people who give because it's a tradition of their family to give. So being able to speak to all of those different donor motivators, and it can't always be a crisis, right? We can't run an organization that there's always a crisis, but there is that language that meets the different reasons that people give. I'll give you an example. When I was the vice president at the Los Angeles Mission, one program, we helped the homeless, but the ways and the reasons that we help them, some who are interested in meals, then we have a message around meals. Those who are interested in bed nights, we have a message around bed nights. Those who are talking about the interest of why is this good business to help and get the homeless off the street, that's a business conversation. So any language that you use is going to hit a certain segment of conversation. But again, articulating impact of crisis, of reason and impact has to be very multifaceted. You all want to be experts in telling your story of why now. Why now is it relevant and important? And it can't be always a crisis, right? It has to be opportunity, it has to be impact, it has to be future or expected change, and capacity. So I hope that helps too.
And I would say not for every nonprofit, but I do think that the goal of some of our organizations need to put ourselves out of business to a degree. Like we don't want to continue to fuel money into systemic issues that don't have a solve, right? So I think we need to think through, like, what would it look like if this problem is addressed so much so that we don't need this service anymore? And so I know that that's super aspirational, and I'm not ever trying to discredit like programs and services that are like for the general upkeep of community or a demographic. But I do think that we need to think about that even as fundraisers and leaders of organizations. We don't want to have to host a pantry in our neighborhood for forever, because that means that we're just nursing the problem. So
there's an example of that. I believe is it Easter Seals where their initial mission was to combat childhood infant mortality, and they did so well with it that they had to change their mission. And so that's a wonderful point, Chris, that if we're doing the work and we are effective with creating and causing change, you also have to be prepared for what that next step looks like and who your organization can become. What does that evolution look like, and building those relationships that'll go along with your growth.
I agree to that point, because you want to show you can't ask for the same reason forever, right? I can't keep going to the same funder and saying, fund me now because so and so is hungry, and I go back next year, so this person is still hungry. The fund's going to ask, well, what did you do with the money I gave you the first time? Like, how are we not supporting to get them to this next phase? How is your program not evolving? So I definitely agree in that point in regards to, as we are nonprofit leaders, um, we do need to also continue to maintain and consider the idea of evolving and pivoting and growing our organization. Because if we're solving problems at some point, if we're doing this correctly, the problems that we're saying we're striving to solve, we should be making some kind of progress in that regard. So I agree with you 100%.
I had a question for those that are on the committee or the panel. Talking about just the field of fundraising in general, I'm appreciative for this conversation because this is the most people of color that I've seen in one space in this field. So, I mean, in one space. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because most areas that I've been in, it's where, and studies have showed that it's about 1%, maybe 2% people of color who are in fundraising. I wanted to hear your comments on that, and then also about how we give and what strategies we can apply to, you know, us giving, and then what sort of obstacles you faced as a fundraiser within, you know, in America.
I can address the second part. So my title is Community Engagement Director, and they hired me on 2.5 years ago because while North Texas Giving Day has been extremely successful, what we saw from the data was that the average giver was 55, female and white. And what we know about what's happening in North Texas and any metropolitan city is that that is not the population that is like growing the most. And so they brought me on to try to figure out how could we get more Black people to give and to see North Texas Giving Day as a viable way that they could express their philanthropy. And so as I started out trying to like learn like what were the issues and the history around why people weren't investing in Giving Day, people of color that is, I had some focus group conversations where Black people were saying, we give, it just might not be to this community foundation, but we are heavy tithers. We support in our families. And so I think it's really trying to capture and figure out the ways that traditionally and historically people of color give and honoring that. I think that there has been a longstanding history where the word philanthropy, even as a term, has been a little bit inaccessible because it has generally been reserved for people who are white, male, millionaire and billionaires. And so it's redefining and shaping the narrative about what philanthropy actually means and what it looks like in the communities that are local to us. And so I think for me, part of my mission, even as a nonprofit professional, especially one that is working on the foundation side for a huge majority white, historically racist institution, is to change the way that we are seen. When it comes to like grant making, I tell the committees all the time, there's no way that you can have a grant making team or a grant making group that is deciding on the grants and you don't have people around the table who actually can speak to the thing that we're making the grant for. And so part of my work is to diversify the way that we are seen and heard in the philanthropic sector, in the nonprofit leadership sector. And so that's something that I'm super passionate about. But to your point, where it is right now, I am probably one of the highest in terms of ranking in my organization. And it's only 2 of us. And so it is something that needs to change within the sector so that we can be more inclusive and more equitable about the people who really are doing this work.
Amazing. I agree. I just really want to thank, I'm sorry, Jennifer, did you want to, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to add, having been in this industry now for going on close to 4 decades, I can say that at the executive level, that 1% is actually true, right? I can count on one hand all of the professionals that I had an opportunity to work with at a level of knowledge. And I think that it really comes to access to information, right? So how did I learn? I learned by doing the job. How do we get at the table to have conversations with those individuals who have the capacity, who have the resources, or who can make the connection? It comes from us being positioned with the knowledge, not just being at the table, but being knowledgeable about what to say at the table and what we give to the table, right? And so I want to, as we talk about how do we change that, I think that we change it by having, more sessions like this, where we have access to people who will and can pour in real information that's going to enable you to do the work. However, you've got to do the work. You can't just come to the table and then say, I want access, but you've also got to be able to do the work. Now, we know we've got to work harder. We know we've got to be more prepared, but I can say that in my years of raising money, it was not generally from people who look like me, right? But those who give, who are from people from cultures of color, Hispanics and even Asians and even Blacks, what motivates us to give and the culture of giving is what we need to tap into, not just the color, but the culture. What is it then? How are we raised and thought about? We give to churches, we give to places of faith because that's what we saw Mama do and Big Mama do, right? And those places of worship, they had food shelters and they had, food banks, but we want to also teach philanthropy, teach the business of philanthropy. I think would help us to also be more engaged and influential. I think that we have a huge influence in terms of our dollar, but we've got to also be educated in that area. So that, forums like this is so important, and stepping out of our comfort zone is going to be helpful as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone for being on. And what I think is so interesting about this is we're in different times and we have to learn how to do different things differently. And I am grateful for these experts who came and gave us a bit of their time and their knowledge to help us do better and serve our communities better. And if anyone has, well, if no one else has anything else to say, then we can do the benediction. And Mukund, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this was a really interesting boot camp. Learned quite a lot, and all the 4 presenters were excellent, and they were very resourceful, and they knew the nuts and the bolts and the nuances of their subject, and they were very helpful. So my thanks to all the 4 presenters, as well as to EU and the gentlemen for the showing of hearts, I think, for arranging such a nice program, and also to council member Adrian Adams for supporting such a wonderful program. So looking forward such future programs as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta. We appreciate you for being here with us today. I just want to add right before Denise does the benediction, but I just want to add, as I mentioned earlier when we first started, the Showing Hearts Foundation, we're a platform for conversations like this. It's a free co-working community where we encourage nonprofit leaders to just be a part of and share resources, share experiences, be in community with one another so that we can continue to build each other up as we are making these life-changing impacts in our communities. So I included a link to our co-working community if you are interested in joining the community and being surrounded with other leaders. Just follow the link that's in the chat. It'll just allow us to get information and data on your organization, just so we have a better understanding of who you are and what you're striving to do and how we could better support you within the community. But on my end, once again, I thank all the presenters, all the keynotes for getting on and answering the call of joining this nonprofit boot camp. And we definitely hope that this isn't the end. And we would love to have each and every single one of you back for future workshops and boot camps to come.
Absolutely.
I had attended one of your programs in the evening at your Jamaica, some art center or somewhere, and that
Yes.
was really great.
Yes, yes, I remember. Thank you. Thank you again for following following through and coming through to all the workshops. We definitely appreciate you and we look forward to building with you and your amazing organization.
Very good. Yeah.
And we have everyone's email so we can get the presentations out to you. Hopefully early next week for you to use for your reference. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody. Please feel free tag, follow us on social media. Instagram is @_showing_hearts. Facebook is facebook.com/showinghearts. And our website is showinghearts.org. So everything's showing hearts. So ultimately, we just want to make sure that we stay connected, share with other groups, other organizations, what you've learned today. Again, we build each other up. Iron sharpens iron. So let's continue to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Presenters, keynotes, just stay on a little longer.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Be blessed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Hi, Frederick.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good to see you again.
Yes, yes, same here.
Good.